But first, in 1981, police received a mysterious call about a body that had been found dumped in the undergrowth by the side of a road. Now, over 40 years on, detectives are still no closer to identifying who that woman was.
August 1981, in rural North Yorkshire. The body of a woman is discovered by police.
All the police know about the woman is that she was aged about 40, 5 feet 1 or 2, with false teeth and short brown hair.
This is unusual in as much that we have no identity of the body that was found. It's rather strange as much that it is badly decomposed.
Do you have any idea how she met her death?
Unfortunately, at this stage, no.
So you're faced with an utter mystery then, aren't you?
Completely, yes.
She remains one of the more enduring mysteries for North Yorkshire police, and indeed probably for most of the north of England.
All of this happened before Adam Harlan's time. But as manager of the Cold Case Review Unit, he's now in charge of the investigation.
It started back in 1981 when a call was made to Ripon Police Station by a man who describes having found a body amongst the Rosebay willow herb on the road to Scorton.
The caller refused to give his details.
When he's asked why, he says it's national security. I doubt it was national security. We've never been able to trace that individual.
The anonymous caller said the body could be found on a minor road near Sutton Bank, an escarpment in the North York Moors. Officers took some time to find it in dense vegetation.
The area had to be cleared. They had to scythe away through the undergrowth to find this body. And the skeleton of a female was found, but in a state of decomposition, suggesting that she had been dumped at that location.
Other evidence uncovered at the site suggested she'd been there for some time.
Underneath the body was found a yoghurt pot top, which contained the date of the 6th of September 1979. That would suggest that the body had to have been placed on top of that in sometime in 1979.
That same year, a local horse rider noticed a pungent smell as he passed the spot, but he didn't report it at the time. "43 years on, the scene's changed. But the same questions remain.
The woods have grown up, the vegetation has changed, and it's a pretty miserable place to have your body just dumped by the side of a road somewhere. The circumstances of this lady's death point towards it being an unnatural death. We don't think she died in this location, but she's been brought to this location after her death.
She could have been from anywhere, so detectives worked with what they had, which was the skeleton.
We know that she has given birth 2 or perhaps 3 times.
The post-mortem examination revealed an unusual deformity.
Her C1 vertebra was malformed, and that meant that her skull may have sat at a slightly strange angle to the top of her neck. This is described at the time as saying that the lady might have had stooped shoulders.
In an unusual move for the time, scientists and Granada TV's makeup department were asked to help.
A wax head was made based upon the features of her skull to provide a representation of what this lady looked like in real life.
Missing women were traced because of the appeal, but it didn't offer any new leads. As there seemed no chance of positively identifying the remains, 2 years after she was found, the woman was buried in the cemetery at Moulton. 28 years later, with scientific advances in DNA, the team hoped for a breakthrough.
We applied to the coroner for an exhumation, which allows us to carry out further examinations. And from that examination, we were able to establish this lady's genetic identity, her DNA. So what we have is a small improvement, perhaps, but otherwise a mystery which is now rolling on into its 5th decade.
But investigators haven't given up hope.
Here in front of us is a patch of earth where Our Lady is. It's certainly nicer than being left in the undergrowth. But you realise that for most people, they've been missed. There are people who love them, and people who remembered them, and people who wanted to memorialise them. And sadly, as we stand at the moment, that's not the case with this lady. But perhaps we could do something to make sure that people knew who she was and give her a chance to be remembered.
Yeah, we really do want to find out some answers to this case. I'm joined by Cold Case Review Unit Manager Adam Harland from North Yorkshire Police. You saw him in the film there. Adam, welcome to the programme. This is a really perplexing case for you and the team. But just take us back to 1981 when the call first came in.
It's Friday the 28th of August. That's the Friday just before August bank holiday. It's 8 o'clock in the morning. It's at Ripon Police Station, and a phone call comes in from a man who we've never identified, saying that he's found human remains up near Sutton Bank in the undergrowth there. The police attend at that location, and they find there under the Rose Bay willow herb the remains of a female. Now, we know from investigations at the time that the body was on top of the top of a yoghurt pot, dated from 1979, and from the vegetation in the area, we know the lady has been there for at least a year, so we believe that she actually got to that location in 1979.
Now, you were provided with some information from a member of the public which corroborated these dates, didn't it?
That's right. There are, in fact, a number of people who reported a strong smell in that area, and one in particular, a local jockey out on a training ride, had noticed a smell that he thought was a fox and was intending to return that day to go and recover the brush from the fox. Unfortunately, he fell off his horse, he broke his leg, he went to hospital. Perhaps if he'd stayed on the horse a little longer, we wouldn't be here today.
Yeah, who knows? So what have you been able to find out about this woman then?
What we know about this lady is that she's between 35 and 45 years old, probably at the top end of that age range. That means she was born in the 1930s. She's about 5 foot tall, 5'2" tall. She's got shoulder length brown hair. She has a deformity of her neck, which means that perhaps in its severest case, her head would have been held at a peculiar angle. But for most people who have that deformity, and it is a genetic deformity, so it would run through families, it just manifests as a headache of some form or other, or perhaps as hunched shoulders. We know that she had no upper teeth, a dental plate, and very few lower teeth, 6 front lower teeth. She was a heavy smoker, and she probably didn't clean her teeth very often. We also know that she'd given birth 2 or 3 times, hopefully live births, so that there are people related to her who hopefully are still alive today.
Are there any clues as to why she was found at the side of the road?
We don't know from her remains how she died. We do believe that she didn't die at that location, but she was taken there and that she was dumped. And we don't believe that was necessarily the place that the person who brought her there was intending to dump her at the time. But that's all speculation. All we really want at the moment is to know who this lady is, and that would help us move towards answering the other questions.
Well, as you said, this woman could have living relatives, and you're extremely keen to try and put all the pieces together and identify who this woman is.
Absolutely. What we have now is her DNA. That means to say that we can establish a link between her and families, if families come forward to suggest that she's missing from within their family. We know she's somebody's daughter, she's probably somebody's sister, a niece, an aunt. If her children are still alive today, she's probably a grandmother and very possibly even a great-grandmother. And we're looking for people to look at their family histories to see if there's somebody missing, either from their immediate family or perhaps from their wider family, who would fit with any of these details, so that we can go to that place in Moulton Cemetery and identify who that lady is.
Adam, thank you so much. As you say, there could be so many connections, and there are some quite distinctive features about this woman, as Adam mentioned. So does any of it ring a bell? If so, then the number to call is 08000 468 999. Our first appeal takes us to Aberdeen in a case that's become one of their most notorious unsolved crimes. Up on the coast of northeast Scotland, the 1980s was a time of unprecedented change.
Aberdeen was in a state of transformation. At that time, the four major industries were fishing, shipbuilding, industrial textiles, and paper. And a lot of them were in decline, and of course then the oil hit Aberdeen, and that basically changed everything. We saw a large influx of people from around the world, a lot of transient people into Aberdeen.
Alec McKay lived here through these changes, but the memories that have stayed with him are of his uncle George and one of the city's darkest episodes.
George was born and bred at Aberdeen. He grew up in Aberdeen. He was just an ordinary working man. And we called him, well, part of the family called him George. Our part called him Dodd, which is an abbreviation for George. My Uncle Dodd was just a genuinely nice guy. He liked kids, and growing up, we had a great time with him. He loved his hobbies, whether it was keeping his pigeons. He had a small boat that he liked to go out, and I think he was a big kid at heart as well, in many ways.
He'd been happily married for 37 years.
My Aunt Jessie was one of life's gems. Her and Dodd met and married. They had a great marriage. Their relationship was really strong, really strong.
In the late 1970s, George was made redundant from his job at a factory. To make ends meet, he took up work as a taxi driver.
That was really just to earn an income from it for him and my Aunt Jessie, and he didn't particularly like it. I know my Aunt Jessie really hated him doing that job. She always said to him, she says, "I'm worried about your dad doing that, particularly on the night shift." He says, "Oh, Jess," he said, "if anybody tries to take my money, etc., he says, I'm going to give it to them." He says, my Uncle Dodd was not a fighter. He just was not a fighter.
On Thursday, the 29th of September 1983, George was working an evening shift. At around 8:30 p.m, his Ford Cortina taxi was seen parked as he picked up a fare on the busy Queen's Road. He radioed through to the taxi control room to say he was heading to Cooter on the western outskirts of Aberdeen. But George would never reach his destination. As George drove his taxi towards Cooter, he turned onto Pitfoddle's Station Road and stopped. It's there George was brutally attacked by his passenger. The attacker used a cheese wire as a garrote. They spilled out onto the road, where two boys passing on their bikes witnessed George being strangled. He was desperately calling for help. The two boys raced to call the police, but it was too late.
Dodd was late, And Jessie had been anxious in terms of when she got to see her husband again. And then there's a knock at the door. Police were there with on it. It's funny, I never get emotional, but just something's set me off, sorry.
And then the phone in Alec's house rang.
What did you say, Mother? He says, Dodd's dead. I says, oh. And then, of course, I asked her what had happened, and she says, well, it's a little bit fuzzy just now. She says, but he's been murdered. He was out in his taxi, and someone's murdered him. And that was the night that we lost my uncle.
Police have been searching waste ground and gardens all round the quiet suburban street where Mr. Murdoch died. Dog handlers too have been called in to help in the search for a man between 20 and 30 years old whose dark clothing, say the police, may be blood-stained.
I would appeal to anyone who was in the Queens Road area of the city between 8:15 and 8:45 last night and who saw anything that they think will help me.
Police have set up a base close to the spot Mr. Murdoch was attacked on the ground outside his taxi. The man they're looking for is 5 foot 7 inches tall, thin, has short dark hair and is clean shaven.
The news shocked the nation. Dubbed the Cheesewire Killer, police mounted a huge manhunt to find George's murderer.
It was brutal, very brutal. Someone carrying a cheese wire with them? Yeah, wow, what kind of person would do that? They're not using it for their work. It's premeditated, it has to be. It takes a special, callous individual to go out with something like that.
A possible sighting of a man seen with blood on his hands at a local chip shop shortly after the murder didn't bring any new leads or a name. After a long investigation, and despite their efforts, there were no substantial leads and no further clues. All that is known is that George's wallet and his fares from that evening had been taken. Jessie's worst fears had been played out.
Unfortunately, of course, after the death of Dodd, her life changed just remarkably. Her health went into decline. She never ever spoke about Dodd's murder, but she never felt safe. She always thought that the killer was going to come back and harm her.
On the 24th of March 2004, Jessie passed away.
So unfortunately, she went to her grave, not knowing who his murderer was. At times, it makes me angry, sad. I mean, that she wasn't able to see justice.
After all this time, Alec and the rest of George's family haven't given up hope that someone may come forward with information.
For the family, and also for those that have passed, you can't take something like that to your grave. I mean, even if it's a hunch and it's a small piece of information, please share it. Small snippets of information from you might actually help us with a small piece of information from somebody else. We're able to start joining the dots. I mean, closure to a family is I mean, it's like gold dust. It's something that you crave for, that you need. We certainly do. Even after 38 years, and I know a lot of people might say cold case murder, who cares? And a family care. We've always cared, we always will.
I'm joined by DI James Callender from Police Scotland now, the investigating officer in the case. Thank you for joining us, James. It's clearly a long time ago, but it's obvious this is still deeply felt by the family.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's vital for the family and ourselves that, you know, we're finding cuts this killer. Poor Jessie died without knowing who killed her husband, and the family are determined to find out who that is and seek some closure for themselves.
Definitely. Well, can you just talk us through the key details of what happened that night? We're going to see the map now that we can show you. Just talk us through this, James.
Yeah, so the 29th of September 1983, George was working as a taxi driver and he picked up a fare in Queen's Road in the West End of Aberdeen. He travelled that couple of miles to Bitfordle Station Road and informed the control room he was doing a journey to Cooter, and that's where he was attacked with a cheese wire which was fashioned into a garrote.
Oh, it's just so barbaric. And there were two young witnesses that did see what happened, which must have been traumatic for them. There was also someone else, we mentioned it in the film there, that came into a takeaway who you'd still like to identify. Tell me about that person.
Yeah, so that night in a fish and chip shop named Mr. Chips on Great Western Road, a gentleman entered the fish and chip shop. He was wearing dark clothing, dark hair, in his early 20s. He had several scratches to his face, a bruised eye, and he was asking for plasters, and he had a cut hand. OK, now it's worth mentioning this person was described as being in their 20s at the time. Of course, there would be significantly older, perhaps mid to late 50s now. Now, this was such a brutal attack. Money was taken, but even that was a very small amount, wasn't it? Yeah, absolutely. George had a small amount of money on him. The killer took his wallet and the takings from the taxi, which amounted to anywhere between £21 and £35. Not a lot of money. This shouldn't have happened. George shouldn't have lost his wife, and obviously the family have lost a beloved husband and an uncle. And we heard in the film there the family saying he was the sort of person that said if anyone was trying to take my money, I'd just give it to them. He would just give it to them, absolutely. And as his nephew Alex said, he wasn't a fighter. OK. How can our viewers help today? It was a long time ago, but what can they do? Yeah, we're just hoping to reach out to those people we haven't reached out to before. Hopefully they can provide us with that little bit of information, that vital information that'll help us close this case. Yeah, it could be that one piece of information that makes all the difference. James, thank you. It's worth noting that the family, along with a local newspaper, have come together on this to provide a £20,000 reward for information leading to the confirmed identity of the killer, if anyone did need that extra incentive. So, do you have any information that could help police catch the person responsible?
Now to our first appeal, and a couple whose regular daily dog walk turned into a petrifying ordeal.
We do a lot of walking with the dog, and we found Spike Island. And as soon as I saw the swans, I was just taken with them. So we decided to come down and feed them every morning. But it gave us the fresh air, it gave us the exercise, which is something really important.
Sylvia and John Pinder live in St Helens, about 10 miles from Spike Island on the Mersey estuary. And since she retired 2 years ago, Sylvia's had more time to spend there.
The alarm goes off very early. I get all the food ready, load the car, and we set off about 5:15, 5:30. And we get here all on 5:45, 6 o'clock, and we've got all the swans waiting for us.
Last summer, a couple of days before Sylvia's 74th birthday, the couple set out as usual.
We arrived here. I left my husband, John, and the dog on the car park because there were some signets with the parents. So I wanted to make sure they were OK. We have pigeons and other wild birds here, and he was feeding them. I just walked down with a bucket of feed down to the other end of the canal.
I felt out the corner of my eye somebody was approaching, so I turned slightly and I noticed a man walking past me, and for some reason he seemed a bit different than the normal people. People tend to potter about who come onto Spike Island. They're either walking dogs or fishermen, and they're not in a rush or even focused. This individual seemed very focused and he seemed to be walking more with purpose. He also walked in the same direction as my wife Sylvia had walked.
I sensed there was somebody coming up behind me. And to be quite honest, I didn't think anything about it. I walked past where the flyover is, and he just appeared on my left side. He grabbed my coat at the neck and just said, give me your purse, give me your money. And because he pulled me down, by this time I was flat on my back. And he just straggled across me, trying to look in the pockets and screaming at me in my face for money, my purse, my bag. And I was just saying, I haven't got anything. I'm going feeding the swans. I haven't got anything. And then I screamed louder than I thought I could.
Across the canal, her screams were heard by a fisherman who couldn't get over to help her. But he shouted at the attacker, who then fled.
Pulled a hood up over his head as he ran away. And he ran away the way he'd come for me. I remember his face. I shut my eyes now and I could see his face. I was absolutely shook. I was crying. And the person on the other side of the bank was shouting to me, are you okay, are you okay? And he was getting himself worked up because he couldn't get to me. I managed to get up again. I started walking back. Because I'd been longer than I said, John started walking down the towpath to see where I was.
As I got closer, I could see she was distressed. And she just burst out, John, I've been attacked. And I instantly could see something serious had happened. And as she came towards me, I held her and she was shaking, shaking pretty bad. I felt blazingly mad. I can't really go into words what I wanted to do, but I felt as though I'd let her down quite a lot by not being with her.
The fisherman had called the police, who quickly mounted a search for the attacker, leaving Sylvia to think about what could have happened.
I honestly thought this could be good further. It could have been a sexual attack. How did I know he wouldn't have a knife? How did I know he didn't have a weapon? And that really, really bothered me. And all these things I was going through my mind afterwards, the what ifs this, what ifs that. And that's why probably I didn't sleep and I was getting flashbacks.
The attack has left its mark on Sylvia.
If somebody comes up to me behind me, I don't know where they are, I will move away. I can't have close contact with people I don't know.
I feel as though she's not as confident as she was before this happened to her. She constantly, when we walk, turns round to see where I'm up to.
But she's adamant it won't crush her spirit.
It made me determined that I would still come here, because I think if I hadn't to come, he'd have won, and I didn't want him to win. I still wanted to come down here.
They hope the man will soon face the consequences of his actions.
It would give me satisfaction that he'd been caught, and also that he wouldn't do it to anybody else.
Such a scary thing for Sylvia to have to go through. I'm joined now by DC Rob Catterall from Cheshire Constabulary, who's investigating this. Rob, thanks so much for coming in and talking to us about this. It's just as well the fisherman was there, really, isn't it?
Definitely, without a doubt.
Yeah, so tell us a bit more about Spike Island as a place. From the film, in parts it looked quite picturesque.
Yeah, indeed. So Spike Island, it's an area of parkland in Widnes overlooking the River Mersey. Families come down to see the swans and feed the swans. There's a cafe there, and fishermen line banks of the canal that leads into the River Mersey. It's a safe place, and we'd like to keep it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. So remind us when this incident took place.
So this incident occurred on Sunday the 1st of August last year. Sylvia and her husband John arrived at the Boathouse Cafe car park early that morning, as they do most mornings, and the call came into police at around 7:30 a.m.
What do we know about the suspect?
So thankfully, Sylvia got a very good look at her attacker, and she's managed to provide a detailed description. With that description, we've been able to put an e-fit together. So we're looking for a white male, around 5'11" in height, slim build with very short or shaven, light-coloured hair with pinched features in the face. He's described as wearing a dark hooded jacket and jeans.
Yeah, he's quite a distinctive-looking man, isn't he, from that e-fit? And you think he's likely to be local?
It is likely that he's local to the area. Sylvia described him as having a Scouse accent, almost exaggerated, and the fisherman who actually made the call to police to report it described him as having a plastic Scouse accent, sorry. But obviously we don't want to rule out that he could be from further afield.
Yeah, of course. Now, you did, as part of your investigations, manage to recover some forensic evidence.
We do have a partial DNA sample which will be suitable for comparison if a name is put forward, and we can quickly rule someone out if that doesn't match.
Rob, really good to speak to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You can have a look at the e-fit. It'll also be up on our website for the rest of the series too. And if you think you recognise him, then the number to call is 08000 468 999. Now it's time to meet some criminology students in Glasgow who are hot on the heels of some real-life cold cases.
There are thousands of people who've been missing for years, and human remains that have been discovered but never identified. But at Glasgow Caledonian University, they're trying a new way to train the investigators of tomorrow. They've set up a cold case unit to give their students these difficult, real-world cases to try and solve.
The cold case unit at Glasgow Caledonian University started last year, and we try to resolve cases that are more than 12 months old, where somebody has either gone missing or where human remains have been found and we've not yet identified who they are.
At present in the UK, there are around 4,000 people who've been missing for more than 1 year, and there are around 1,000 unidentified remains.
Students who volunteer to work in the unit are put into teams and allocated cases to work on, including some that have been passed on by Police Scotland.
Essentially, it gives them an experience of what it would be like to be a real-life investigator, to work on these sorts of cases. They learn all sorts of techniques around investigation, intelligence analysis and so on, and how they would pursue research to try to forward a case. So for them coming to study criminology, it's quite a unique opportunity to be able to work on these live cases and to be able to also liaise with criminal justice institutions like the police.
The students only take on cases that aren't currently being investigated as crimes, but their work could uncover vital evidence.
I think the first thing we have, I would say, is the gift of time. We have a group of very enthusiastic students who are willing to put that time into these cases.
Their aim is to try and gather all those bits of that jigsaw puzzle and try and build this bigger picture, trying to complete the puzzle ideally. But actually, sometimes we won't necessarily complete the puzzle. But what we have done is given the police a few more pieces.
The students are currently working across 7 cases of unidentified remains, some of the mysteries that have been unsolved for decades.
One of our cases involves a man whose body was recovered from a roof space in a set of flats in 1977. And he had a number of interesting possessions on him.
He had some gig tickets for a Led Zeppelin concert, which was taking place in Earl's Court in 1975. And this is a really sort of iconic concert.
So we'd like to generate an appeal based on some of these possessions and reaching out to communities such as Led Zeppelin fans on Facebook and asking them, did you go to this concert with someone who you've lost touch with?
These students can use investigative resources that weren't available in 1975, like social media and online forums.
What we want to try and do now is establish what kind of ticket did he have, and can that kind of tell us where he purchased the tickets? Did he get them in Scotland? Did he get them in London? And that way we can start to build a picture around where he was during these days, months and weeks up into when his body was found.
Another case being investigated by the students is a 35-year-old mystery they call Edinburgh Man.
So Edinburgh Man was found in Regent Gardens, Edinburgh, 1987, a couple of days before Christmas.
With an historic case like this one, the unit can access expertise from other academics in the university to help put together a picture of what the man could have looked like.
We've drawn on our colleagues who work in forensic anthropology because we can utilise their skills to either create what we call post-mortem depictions, which is an image of the deceased person, or if the body is very badly decomposed, they can do facial reconstructions, which allow us to create an image of how that person may have looked in life.
And we've got a picture of the victim, so we do know that he had these really distinctive hazel eyes, a beard and a moustache.
People might see that image and think, actually, that looks like somebody I know, or that looks like my family member. I mean, the cases are endlessly fascinating, and you do end up, really intrigued about who these people are, how have they ended up there. So for each one of these cases, it's got its own social history, its own social story. It's a story and a biography of somebody's life, and we're trying to piece that together and make sense of it, which I think is part of the reason that we remain so engaged with the cases.
And the students believe their efforts are worthwhile.
It's been able to feel useful and being able to feel like you're part of solving something that might bring a lot of peace to a lot of people.
It's definitely on my mind about being able to give a family closure, because when you think about it, you do get quite connected to the people that you're working on. Somebody knows who these people are, and they're somebody's loved ones, so it'd be a massive honour to be able to give them their names back.
It's really fascinating work, and there's actually been an update since filming. And here to tell us more is student Lou Clave, who we just saw in the film there. Lou, welcome. Really good to have you with us. So those Led Zeppelin tickets have actually provided you with a new lead. You've managed to find an image of a man.
Yeah, we did. We were able to draw on the expertise of Locate International volunteers who went to the local records office, and they found a newspaper article in the Matlock Mercury from around the time the body was found, and it included an image of our guy. So before we just had a description of him, but now we have this image that hopefully we can take to these online communities or communities that still exist of Led Zeppelin fans, and we've got an image that we can now show them along with the other information we have about the tickets.
It's so interesting, isn't it? It's a real fact-finding mission, piecing all these bits of the jigsaw together. You also managed to find out that this man was diabetic.
Yeah, and this is something that we think will be key in trying to find out the identity of our guy, because being insulin dependent in the 70s is going to be a much different experience to how it was today. And we found out that people were camping for hours. They were sleeping overnight trying to get tickets to this gig. So there's a really good chance that someone saw him taking his insulin jag in the queue, or maybe even the concert. We know that this concert at Earls Court went on for hours. So there's potential that someone maybe recognises this guy or remembers someone having to take insulin when they were at the gig.
So this is a real crucial piece of information, isn't it? So how can viewers help today? Because you're really looking for a name, aren't you?
Yeah, we really want to find out if anyone is looking for him. If you recognise him, maybe he was your friend, maybe you lost touch, maybe you had a friend who had diabetes in the 70s and you went to this gig together. Sort of any information around that would be so helpful for us and help us to push this case forward a little bit.
How do you find doing this type of research, Lou? Because it's all encompassing.
Yeah, I mean, we work on several cases at a time and you get so attached. And, Maureen and Leslie tell us often, this is cold casework. It's slow, pace yourself. But it never feels slow. It always feels fast-paced. It always feels exciting. And just being a part of something that we hope will bring peace to family and friends who are looking for these people. It just, it's good.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really rewarding work and you're doing a great job. We'll definitely make sure we check in with you again. Lou, thank you so much. As we say, we're going to keep in touch with Lou to see how the case is developing. And if you think you can help at all, please contact the email below. Now, in October 2021, detectives were called to a disused pub after the body of a man was discovered. After months of extensive work by the specialist crime team, they were able to uncover the man's identity, but although they now know his name, they know very little else. Joining us is Detective Chief Inspector Kelly Allen. Kelly, thanks so much for talking to us this morning. This is a real mystery, isn't it? First of all, can you tell us a bit more about how this man was found?
Yeah, in October 2021, in the Simpsons pub, Romford Road in Forest Gate, a body was found in a freezer. A few years earlier, there'd been a fire in the pub, so it was derelict and not being used as a pub. When they finally come round to clear it out, they found him in the freezer.
Gosh, it's quite shocking that, isn't it? So at this point, how did you go about identifying him?
Because of the passage of time, we had to identify him through his dental records. We know in February 2012 that Roy Bigg, this elderly gentleman, was alive and well and had been seen by police. But a short while after, when they went back to see him, they'd been told he'd gone away. And so we are just hoping to get people to come forward to help us identify and understand what was going on in Roy's life.
Yeah, of course. So he could have actually been in that pub for a decade.
Yes.
Gosh, that's shocking, isn't it? Now, have you been able to attribute the cause of death?
Sadly, because of the passage of time, it's been very difficult to identify cause of death. We believe, because of the circumstances in which he was found, we believe he was assaulted and murdered, but a pathologist hasn't been able to give an exact cause of death. But experts are now looking at his bones in order to try and establish that.
So what course has your investigation taken so far? You mentioned that evidence recovery has been quite tricky, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has been very tricky. Forensics were our main focus, but this has been difficult because of the passage of time and the number of people who had access to that pub. So that has been particularly challenging, which is why we're trying to build up a picture about Roy and his life and try and jog people's memory about what was going on and any potential motive.
So what do we know then, Kelly, about Roy so far? I know we've got a photo that we can take a look at.
Yes, sadly, we know very little. We haven't been able to identify any immediate family. We obviously know he was alive and well in 2012. We know he was known in the pub, the Simpsons pub, and we know he was known locally. But we're still looking for those real details about what was going on in his life, especially around February 2012.
And this is why, as you say, jogging people's memory, taking them back to 2012 is so important. How do you go about doing that?
Yeah, I think with a cold case, it's important to do a memory jog. Think about what was going on in 2012, big headlines, the music, main events that was going on, and hopefully that will help paint a picture and jog people's memory.
Absolutely, we can see some of the main headlines. As you mentioned, you've got the Queen's Diamond Jubilee here. That was a big thing in 2012, wasn't it? Loads of other things were going on. We had the London Olympics, of course. Also, David Cameron was Prime Minister at the time. There was some quite extreme weather in 2012 as well. All these little elements, you're thinking, if they might jog a spark in someone's memory that they can then attribute to what may have been going on with
Yeah, hopefully
with Roy.
that if people can think back to what was going on in 2012, that may help dislodge a memory about Roy and the potential motive and people who may have done this to him.
Yeah, absolutely. Kelly, thanks so much for giving us more information on this case. Hopefully we can find some answers and we'll catch up with you a little bit later in the programme.
Is the disappearance of mother of two, Marion Hodge, that we first reported on back in 1985. Almost 38 years on from her disappearance, Police Scotland are relaunching their investigation, and I'm now joined by DCI Stephen McGrath. Good morning. Thank you for joining us today, Stephen. Could you start by just telling us a bit about who Marion Hodge was?
Certainly, Marion was a devoted mother to two children, her son who was 14 and her daughter who was 12. She was described by her friends and family as being very family orientated, and her world revolved around her family and her work. And we believe she had a happy home life, but not a huge social life outside of the family.
Now, we've already said that she went missing in July 1984, a long time ago. Can you explain what you believe happened on that day?
Yeah, well, Marion is understood to have been dropped off at the bus station in the White Sands area of Dumfries. This was around 7:30 a.m. on Friday, the 6th of July 1984. This is the last reported sighting of Marion, and she was reported to be carrying a blue canvas suitcase brown handbag and wearing a cream high-collar blouse, a grey skirt and black sandals. 3 days later, she was reported missing to Dumfries and Galloway Constabulary.
And it was out of character for Marion not to have contacted anyone if she was going somewhere.
That's right, it was very unusual. Marion would visit her sister on a weekly basis, on a Friday without fail. And to her sister, her disappearance was totally out of character. She was employed at the local bank in Lockerbie, and she was described as very hard-working, always punctual. She never failed to attend, and if she was unable to attend, she would contact the bank and let them know. But when she disappeared, she didn't call anyone. Following her disappearance, she failed to make contact at any major family event. Her son's birthday was on the day of her disappearance, and she wouldn't have missed that. She also failed to make contact after the Lockerbie disaster, all of which leads to the family to conclude that she's now dead.
OK, it is very, very sad. Well, we actually have a statement that has been given from Marion's sister. I'm going to read that to you now, and it reads, "When we were told that she had gone away, we believed this was uncharacteristic of our mum, as she wouldn't have left in that manner. She would never have turned her back on her children. The day Marion disappeared was her son's 15th birthday. She thought too much of her children and would never have run out on them like that." It really is sad when you hear that emotional statement written there. I know you've spoken to the family, you and your team. How are the family doing now?
Well, understandably, Marion's disappearance has had a huge impact in their lives, and they've spent the last 38 years looking for answers and trying to understand the reasons behind it. And they're hoping that this investigation will establish exactly what happened to Marion and provide them with the closure that they deserve.
OK, her disappearance was clearly very difficult for her children, aged just 12 and 14 at the time. It is now being treated as a murder, even though it was originally a missing persons inquiry. Even nobody had been recovered, it's still been treated as a murder. So why is that, Stephen?
Well, in 1992, Marion was declared legally dead by the Court of Session in Edinburgh after no one had heard or seen her since her disappearance. And for those that go missing, after 7 years, the family can apply to the court to have this decision made. In 2005, a murder investigation was launched by Dumfries and Galloway Constabulary after the case was reinvestigated due to the body never having been found and no contact being made by Marion. And advancement in investigations led to the case going from a missing person to be classified as a murder. And unresolved murder cases are never closed in Scotland. Police Scotland was established in 2013. We have a homicide governance and review team who keep unresolved homicide inquiries under review, including those from the legacy Scottish police forces. They meet with the Crown Office and Procurator Fiscal Service on a regular basis, and if appropriate, a case is passed to the unresolved homicide investigation team, and that's what's happened in this case.
OK, we are asking people to cast their minds back a long time to 1984, but what are you asking the viewers to help with today?
Well, we're appealing to anyone who remembers anything unusual leading up to Marion's disappearance, any sightings in the White Sands area or any other relevant information over the years that might help our inquiry. We can't stress enough how important the community is in solving this case. We'd like to hear from anyone who hasn't come forward to the police, no matter how small they think something might be, to come forward, tell us what they saw or what they know. We really want to help provide closure for a family who've waited far too long to know who their mother is and what happened to her.
Stephen.
We also have a major incident public portal on the Police Scotland website, which can be used to provide us with any relevant information in relation to Marion's disappearance.
Stephen, thank you. It is a long time ago, but maybe something we've told you today is jogging your memory from that time. If you think you've seen Marion, perhaps you're in the White Sands area of Dumfries in 1984 and remember seeing something unusual. If you do, the number to call is 08000 468 999.
Responsible for our next appeal. It's a really distressing case about the rape of a 13-year-old girl that has traumatised both her and her family. Just to warn you, you may find this upsetting.
When she told me what happened to her, it felt like I was in a dream. It was so hard to listen. I didn't want to hear, and now I can't unhear it. It's been hard to allow my daughter to walk to and from school, to go out with friends, knowing what has happened to her.
It was a usual day, really. I got up and went to school. I remember I forgot to get breakfast. I was in school all day, till home time.
I'd been to the hairdressers and ended up running about 5 minutes late for the school run at the end of the day. I'd pick my daughter up, but sometimes she'd walk home with friends. When I'd arrived, she'd already gone.
That day, I walked home on my own. I walked through Retford Cemetery. There's a canal that runs through it with a bridge. As I approached, I could see a man walking towards me. I went past the man. Then he walked up to me, pulled out a knife. He said, "Don't make any sound. Just come with me." He walked me into some undergrowth. Then he raped me. When it was over, he told me to stay where I was for half an hour. I asked him if anyone was going to hurt me or come get me. He said, "Stay here. I need to get out of town." He left. He walked towards North Road. I waited 5 minutes, still sat on the ground. I decided to get up and sort myself out. I was covered in mud. I tried to wipe it off my face. When I walked out of the cemetery, it felt like everyone was staring at me.
If I was on time, I believe my daughter would have got a lift back, because that day it was raining. It feels like my fault, because I was 5 minutes late. If I was on time, she wouldn't have been hurt. I blame myself.
I'm just trying to get on with my life. I've tried to block out that day. What happened, if I think about it, I just get too emotional.
I've noticed my daughter is quieter since the incident. She's a strong girl, but I know it has affected her. She's quiet, a lot more than she used to be. When this happened, my daughter was just 13. What happened took that 13-year-old girl away. Her innocence was stolen.
It's just awful. Well, I'm joined now by DS Neil Alsop from Nottinghamshire Police. Neil, thanks so much for coming in today. This really is a horrible case. But I think it's important to note, isn't it, that incidents like this are incredibly rare.
It is, thankfully. They are incredibly rare.
Now, we heard from the mother in the film there. She felt like she was to blame, which, of course, isn't the case at all, is it?
In no way is she to take any blame for what's happened. These incidents are incredibly rare.
So how is the mum, how is the victim and the rest of the family doing now?
So the victim's trying to move on with her life and she's doing really well. However, Mum has raised her own concerns that she's seen this change in her, that she's more quiet, and we just want to help her move on from this terrible event.
Of course, and this is why you're here today. So just remind us of the key details, Neil, where and when it happened.
OK, so this incident happened on the 12th of December 2019, so it was a couple of years ago, but it was the day of the general election at that time. It happened in the cemetery in Retford, which is off of North Road, which is one of the main routes in and out of Retford. Now, Retford, although in Nottinghamshire, it is on the border of South Yorkshire and Lincolnshire, so people may well know that area.
And it was in the afternoon, wasn't it, after school, 3:30?
It was, so it happened after 3:30, whilst this young lady was making her way home from school.
Now, we've also got some CCTV from the nearby area close to the attack. We can have a look at that as well. Just talk us through what we're seeing here.
We have. So what you see here is a white male walking towards the scene of this incident. We're very keen to speak to him. Now, this person, I'm very keen to put it out there that this person may well be a witness. He's not a suspect, but we do need to speak to him.
So you're hoping that person or anyone that may have seen that person can come forward?
Yes.
Now, you've also found some key evidence that is crucial, really, from the scene.
We have. So from the scene, we've got DNA. Now, the importance of the DNA will obviously point us towards the offender, but also we can quickly eliminate anybody that may be put forward or family or friends. If you suspect that this person is, we can quickly eliminate them from our inquiries.
Yeah, of course, that's really good to note. Now, also in the film, we heard of the victim saying that after the attack, she felt like people were looking at her, they were watching her. Can you just explain what she meant by this?
Yeah, so whilst we're confident that nobody has witnessed the actual offence take place, when this young lady left the cemetery, she does describe walking past people and feeling like they were looking at her. And we just ask if anybody saw anything on that day to come forward and speak to us.
And it is important just to reiterate the date, because that could, in fact, that specific date, jog people's memories.
Yeah, so, you know, it was a couple of years ago, but it was the day of the general election, so people may well know what they were doing at that time or on that day.
Absolutely. As you say, you're urging anybody to come forward with some information, and hopefully by the end of the programme we could have some updates for you. Neil, thanks again for joining us. So, do you recognise who the man is? Were you in or near Retford Cemetery on the day of the general election in 2019? If you have any information, you can call us on 08000 468 999. This is free from landlines and mobile phones, and that line will be open until midday today. But don't forget, you can always text us 24 hours a day on 63399. Text the word crime, leave a space, then write your message, and your text will be charged at your standard message rate. Or you could always send us an email. The address is cwl@bbc.co.uk.
Yeah, it's so sad. Our next appeal today comes from the quiet Cotswold village of Painswick in Gloucestershire, where a heartless culprit robbed a high street charity shop and terrified its staff and a regular customer.
Nestled in the Gloucestershire countryside is the picture postcard village of Painswick. With its mellow Cotswold stone buildings, it's a popular destination with tourists. 72-year-old Leslie Warriner has lived here for most of her life.
I came to Painswick as a children's nanny to a local family, and I stayed and got married. It's quiet and pleasant. Definitely a safe place to live.
But last December, all that changed, and her peaceful life here was shattered.
We went to the supermarket. I went down to the village to my Tai Chi class, and then when that finished, I walked up to the charity shop as I usually do once a week.
The charity shop Leslie visited supports a local hospice, providing end-of-life care and support for families.
It was donation day, so I'd had quite a few bags being delivered by the till. Obviously aware Mrs. Warriner was in the shop.
But Valerie and Leslie weren't alone for long.
I must have been in there about 15 minutes before the gentleman came in. Didn't really look at him, didn't really take any notice at all of him. Just carried on looking.
The doorbell wasn't working, so I didn't hear somebody else come in. When I came to pick up a donation, I just realised, looking in the mirror, there was somebody else in the shop. A male stood over by the books.
Leslie had found a jumper she liked and was waiting by the till. But she quickly had the feeling that something wasn't right.
Suddenly, somebody appeared really close to me at my back, too close for comfort. Because people don't stand that close to you, do they, when they're waiting behind you?
I went to the till, picked up the scanner to scan the barcode, and as I put my head down and looked back up, the male was behind the customer with a knife at her throat. It was so quick, and I mean so quick. From putting my head down to putting it back up, he was there.
I could feel myself shaking, and I was worried that my legs were going to give way. And I thought, if I suddenly go down, what's he going to do?
Holding Leslie hostage, the suspect demanded the money from the till.
My immediate words were, "You've got to be kidding me," especially as we're a charity shop. And he said, "No, I'm desperate. Give me the money." He then also asked my customer for her money as well.
I feared for my life because I felt so helpless. I just didn't know what he was going to do. I can remember thinking, is he going to do something terrible?
With Leslie being held at knife point, Valerie did as she was told.
With somebody with a knife, I just couldn't take any chances. I just tried to keep extremely calm, do exactly what he wanted. My main concern was Leslie at all times.
The armed robber then took the money and ran from the shop. He left with just £63 from the till and £14 from Leslie. But the robbery has had a much higher cost than that.
I'm fuming, absolutely fuming. I want him locked up for what he's done to us as a charity, but particularly for Leslie.
It knocked me back quite a bit. It's made me into quite a nervous person. I don't sleep very well, and I'm not as happy to do stuff now as I was. It's just made me not trust anybody.
I'm joined now by DS Marcus McInerney from Gloucestershire Constabulary. Welcome, Marcus. Not only is it a beautiful, peaceful village, but the amount of force that was used for what was under £100, it just seems totally unnecessary, doesn't it?
Yeah, it was completely excessive. I mean, she, an arm around her neck and a knife up to her throat. It's, for that, it's had a huge impact on her.
For under £100. So we clearly need to find out who's responsible. What do we know about the suspect?
So what we know, we've got a good description, an e-fit, and a bizarre comment that he made.
OK, well, let's have a look at the e-fit first and talk me through this.
OK, so he's been described as being early 20s, ginger hair, pale white skin, slim build, and he was wearing a black beanie hat, a black jacket and blue jeans.
OK, it is a very, very clear image there. So I urge everyone to have a look at that. Just of note, I'm going to make sure this is on our website as well so people can have another look at that as well. But there is that comment you just said there. There was a significant comment that was made as he was leaving the premises. What was that?
Yeah, that's right. He was challenged by the staff in the shop, and his response was that, the fact that this is a charity shop for a hospice, and his response was, "I know you helped my mum." So I'm just wondering if viewers see that e-fit and that comment, and it's a local hospice. It's Gloucestershire based, so it's highly likely someone with local links.
That's really interesting. And the shop is linked to that hospice?
Correct, yes.
Right, OK. I mean, he could well have been in the local area then. Can you just describe to us where that was? We're going to see a map here. Just talk us through where Painswick is.
Absolutely. So Painswick, it's a beautiful village in the Cotswolds. This type of thing is a huge incident. It had a big impact on the community. It's a tourist attraction in the Cotswolds, and there's the local Rococo gardens that people may actually have been. They may have remembered someone fitting that description or e-fit running past them at the time, because it would have been a big deal at the time. People, you know.
This is huge. We're asking people to cast their minds back, not long before Christmas, that they may have been in those gardens and seen someone fitting the description running past and perhaps not knowing what it was at the time. I have to ask, how are Leslie and Valerie doing now?
Considering the circumstances, they're doing really well. I mean, fair play to Valerie. She's back in the shop. You know, in respect of Leslie, obviously, to have undergone that, it's deeply traumatic, and she's doing incredibly well in the circumstances. But it'll be a bit of time before she gets her confidence back, and it's just why we really want to identify who it is. Hence, you know, that comment. We really do think it's someone with that local link, and if anyone sees the e-fit and puts the comment and the e-fit together, they might know who it is.
Yeah, it could be the missing part of the jigsaw.
Correct,
Marcus, thank you for joining us. Now, as we mentioned earlier, we had lots of great calls last week, and one in particular has led to a significant development. On Wednesday, we featured a case about an armed robbery at a high street charity shop in the quiet village of Painswick in the Cotswolds. It was around 3 o'clock in the afternoon on Thursday, the 2nd of December last year. Suspect walked into the Longfield Hospice charity shop on Bisley Street in Gloucestershire, and after spending a couple of minutes in the shop, he approached a customer, Leslie, who was 72 at the time. She was at the till. He put his arm around her neck and held a knife to her throat. He went on to demand money from the till. In total, he stole £63 from the shop, another £14 from Leslie, just a total of £77. But the incident understandably left her shaken. Well, after our appeal, one viewer sent us a clip of CCTV footage, which they believe related to the incident. We've passed that on to the police, and they're investigating this new lead. They have asked us to show this footage so they can continue their investigation. So do take a good look at it. It's an incredibly clear picture. Do you recognise this man? If so, get in touch, because you could have vital information on this case. The contact details are on your screen.
First today, though, we want to ask for your help with a story you may have been following in the papers. In May last year, activist Sasha Johnson was left with life-changing injuries after being shot at a party in Peckham, South London. 10 months on, and her family is still trying to understand what happened and why. Joining us again is DI Martin Thomas from the Met. Martin, thanks so much for coming in. You were with us yesterday for an appeal, so appreciate you coming back, because this is a really urgent one, isn't it? Firstly, can you tell us a bit more about Sasha?
Yeah, Sasha was a prominent Black Lives Matter activist. She'd often be seen giving speeches in London or attending marches. She was also a youth worker and put a huge amount of energy into the community that she worked and lived in. She has a loving family and 2 sons whose lives have been turned upside down by this shooting.
It's absolutely heartbreaking. What details can you give us about the night of the shooting?
Well, we know that Sasha attended a 30th birthday party on Saturday, the 22nd of May last year. There were about 30 people at that party, and there was a small team of security who were searching people going into the party for weapons. This party was at 37 Consort Road, which is in Peckham. In the early hours of of Sunday, the 23rd of May, 4 men on bicycles are believed to have attended that party. They approached the security staff, tried to get in, and when they weren't able to get in, one of them pulled out a gun and fired off 2 shots towards partygoers. We know that one of those bullets tragically hit Sasha in the head, and the other one hit a man in the leg. The cyclist then made off in a southerly direction. Now, we don't think that Sasha was the intended target of that shooting, but that doesn't undo the consequences of that tragic night.
Can I just ask, how's she doing now?
She's still in a very bad way. She's out of intensive care, but she's lost movement down one side of her body. She's lost an eye, and she's got a really significant brain injury. She'll never live a normal or independent life, and her children will never know her as the strong and independent woman that she once was.
This is just terrible. I cannot imagine what the family are going through at the moment. This has been a really complex investigation for you and your team, hasn't it? What do you know about those people that did this to Sasha?
Well, you're right, it has been a really complex and frustrating investigation, not least because of the wall of silence from people who were at that party and the wider community. But we've managed to gather a huge amount of material, and our CCTV officer in particular has done an amazing job in reviewing thousands of hours of CCTV footage and piecing together a story of what happened that night. And that concentrates around 4 men on bikes that we believe are involved in this shooting. And I believe you've got some footage of that.
Yeah, we can have a look at that now. So let's see this. What can you tell us?
So you can see it's late at night, so the images are quite dark, but we've got 4 men on bicycles who are floating around the area before the party. We think they may even have spoken to people at the party. People will know who these men are. They're around the community. People will have seen them. They knew what they were doing. They were armed themselves with a gun, and you can see, I think, on this image that they're wearing rubber gloves.
Yeah.
And we think that's to stop any forensic evidence being passed on to the gun. They knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
People know who they are, and we need to know who they are, who they were intending to shoot, where they went afterwards, who supplied the firearm. Any information about those 4 men could really help push this investigation forward.
Could be absolutely crucial, couldn't it? We've also got some other footage of a car that you want more information on.
The car is really important. It was in the vicinity of the party throughout the night, and we think it may even have dropped some people off at the party. It's a BMW X6. As you can see from the blurry footage, we were never able to get a registration for that car. But really significantly is just before the shooting, a man on a bicycle speaks to the driver of that car, and we think that person on the bike may have been one of the shooters. So we need to know what the real registration of that car is and who the driver was, as they may have crucial information that could help us get justice for Sasha.
This is so significant. Now, Sasha's sister has read a statement, hasn't she? Here's what she has to say.
We were left emotionally scarred and damaged on the 23rd of May last year. We all got shot in the head. And the pain has been so much at times. It's like we couldn't breathe. How ironic. Because when you saw that George Floyd couldn't breathe, thousands of miles away, you took it to the streets of the UK to fight for justice. Your boys are being so brave and strong. Mom's heartbroken, but she's being so strong. Every day you see what this does to a mother. I can't put into words, but the journey has been devastating.
Martin, listening to Sasha's sister there, it's a difficult watch, isn't it? This has had such a huge impact on the whole family.
Yeah, it really has. And my whole team have a huge amount of respect and admiration for the dignified way that Sasha's family have dealt with this tragedy. And it's really them that I'd like people with information on this case to focus on. That we need information to fill in the gaps in our investigation so that we can get justice for Sasha and her family. And I'd really urge anybody with information about that car, about the 4 cyclists there, and about the intended target of this shooting to come forward and speak to police. And if you don't want to speak to police, you can speak to Crime Stoppers and remain completely anonymous.
Martin, thank you so much. So, does any of this look familiar to you? Do you recognise the men on the bikes or this man in the blue gloves? Or do you have information about what happened at that party in Peckham on the 23rd of May last year? Our number is on the screens below. And as Martin said, you can also call Crime Stoppers, which is completely anonymous. If you have any information, please do pick up the phone.
Now, our first appeal today is from a mum after her son was fatally shot back in 2018. Officers are still looking for the people responsible.
Ethan was a fun-loving boy. He loved to read. Every week I'd have to buy 2 or 3 books because he'd get through them so quickly. He loved to play football, he loved running, he loved being outdoors. He just loved life, always smiling. Just a life and soul.
Ethan was the oldest of Sherry, Ned and Jason Bruce's children.
Oh my God, I mean...
And the youngsters looked up to him.
He was like a role model to them, and he just loved them. He'd always read them bedtime stories, and every time he spoke about them, his eyes would light up. He would help with homework, tell them to be good, eat your vegetables. He was always there for them, you know.
In June 2018, Ethan celebrated his 18th birthday and was looking forward to a bright future.
He'd just started his life. He'd just found love, and he was just in the early stages of manhood.
In October 2018, Ethan was spending the weekend with his girlfriend in Greenwich. Sherry caught up with him on the phone.
This was about 4 or 5 o'clock we spoke. He said, "Mum, I'll call you back later." I didn't get the call, and I just assumed that maybe he had fallen asleep or something like that. So I thought I'd catch up with him the following day, and that call never came.
Later that evening, Ethan had gone out to get some food. He was seen on CCTV in a chicken shop on Woolwich Road. Nearby, 2 vehicles, a Ford Cougar and a motorbike, were driving around the area. Police believe they were looking for someone. As Ethan left the takeaway, he was confronted by a man in a motorcycle helmet. And a fight broke out. Parked across the road, the driver of a Ford Cougar joined the brawl. Ethan managed to escape his attackers, running for his life. Both vehicles followed after him. Ethan ran towards a nearby estate, but was caught up by the 2 men on the motorbike. Police believe one of them pulled a gun and took aim. Ethan was pronounced dead at the scene.
The police came and sat me down and said, Ethan has passed away. And that was the first time I heard. My knees buckled, I was in shock, I didn't know what to do. And then it started to become real at that point. I think he touched the lives of so many people in his short space of time. His funeral was packed. There's people standing outside of the church, and there wasn't a dry eye in the church. People spoke about him, people were bereft, and we had such a big celebration afterwards as well. We celebrated his life. I think for the first year I was in a daze. It's all been a blur. It's just been just unimaginable pain. Losing a child in such tragic circumstances, you just cannot, the words cannot describe how you feel. And I had to try and put together my life again to try and keep going for my daughter.
Almost 3.5 years later, Ethan's family are still struggling with unanswered questions.
The police have said they've hit a block in the road without answers from people from the community. They can't do any more. Somebody must know something, and if you can put yourself in the shoes of a mother and a family who are grieving and want to know answers, I would ask you to come forward and to give that information.
Ethan should have celebrated his 22nd birthday this year. So far, those who took his life have not faced the consequences.
Justice would mean for me to know who the perpetrators were, why it happened, and also to see them be convicted and to spend time in prison for murder. He spent 18 beautiful years, and that's what I focus on, but I do need to get answers to be able to move on. And it will never move on completely, but we have to rebuild our lives, and without those answers, it's impossible to do that.
It's truly heartbreaking, isn't it? Well, I'm joined now by Detective Inspector Martin Thomas, who is investigating this case. Martin, thanks so much for joining us this morning. We could hear from Ethan's mum there, Sherry, actually speaking so powerfully about the impact that this murder has had on her and the family. I mean, she's so brave. How are the family holding up?
Well, Cherie's obviously still mourning the loss of her son. And as we saw in the footage, although Cherie is an incredibly strong woman, she's really struggling to move on from this because she knows that the people responsible for Ethan's murder are still out there. So we're hoping that this appeal will really make people who know anything about what happened that night come forward and help us progress this case.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's talk in a bit more detail about the case, because you've managed to retrieve some key CCTV footage, which we'll go through, that's helped you to piece together really what happened the night of the attack. But first, can you talk us through the key locations and the timings from that night?
Yeah, this incident happened over 3 years ago on Monday, the 22nd of October 2018. It happened at about 9:20 in the evening, and we know that from CCTV footage that Ethan was inside Mowley's chicken shop, which is on the Woolwich Road in the borough of Greenwich. We know that when Ethan left that shop, he was confronted by the man in the motorbike helmet and a fight broke out, which we've seen on the footage. Ethan ran off from that fight and he went down Comerall Place, which is near Armitage Road. We know that the person in the motorbike helmet got back on a bike, and that bike and a car followed Ethan down to where he went, and shortly after that he was shot dead.
Just so tragic. Talking about the car, we've actually got a clip of CCTV that shows that car. It pulled up and joined the street fight. So let's take a closer look at this. Just explain what we're seeing here, Martin.
We know that car was opposite the chicken shop when Ethan was inside, and the people that are in that car are involved in his murder. It's a silver Ford Cougar, and we know from ANPR footage that car came from the direction of Charlton Village before the murder. The car is displaying false number plates, so we've never been able to identify the true identity of that vehicle, and unfortunately we've never been able to recover it either.
Let's take a look at some CCTV footage of the motorbike as well. We can see that here.
Yes, it's a large black motorbike. We believe it's a Triumph Street Triple or a Triumph Speed Triple. We believe the person that got on the back of that bike was the person who confronted Ethan, and we think that he may also be the one responsible for shooting him later. But any information on those two vehicles, as we haven't been able to recover them, about their true identity or their whereabouts, would be incredibly useful in this case.
And there's also somebody within the CCTV footage that you're really keen to identify.
That's right. When Ethan was inside the chicken shop, CCTV captures a man walking past that chicken shop. You can see him here. He's a white male with a beard. We've never been able to identify who he is, but we know that he has information that could be crucial to this case. So if he's watching, I'd encourage him to come forward and speak to us. Or if anybody recognises who he is, please get in contact with us. Let us know who he is, because we believe he is a crucial witness in this case.
Absolutely, and as we heard before, this is something where the family are in unimaginable pain. For anybody that's watching this morning that's actually in two minds as to whether to get in touch, what would you say to them?
There are people out there who know who killed Ethan Ned Bruce, and I'd encourage anyone with any information about this case, no matter how small, to do the right thing and call the police. And if you're not willing to speak to the police, you can call Crime Stoppers and remain completely anonymous.
Martin, thanks very much, and we'll catch up with you again a little bit later in the programme. Hopefully we'll have some updates on this case. Yeah, really fascinating. Now, Thames Valley Police want your help following a sexual assault by touching that happened in Oxford city centre on the 12th of December last year. The victim had been out with a friend for dinner, and at around 10:20, they both began their walk to Oxford train station from George Street to return home. The pair briefly stopped outside the Chinese supermarket on Hythe Bridge Street to film a video on their phone. Then a male who they didn't know approached them. He's described as an Asian male, approximately 6 feet tall and of an athletic build. He was also carrying a Nike rucksack on his back. When he reached the victim and a friend, he touched her groin over her clothing. Immediately, the victim and a friend walked off towards Frieswide Square, but the suspect followed them. The pair then entered a supermarket to get away from him, but he hung around outside the store. Helpfully, a member of staff escorted the victim and her friend to the train station. Once on the train platform, the victim realised that the suspect had followed them there too. They moved into the waiting room where there was a member of station staff, and the suspect hung around on the opposite platform for a short time before eventually leaving. Well, police have released this CCTV of a man they would like to speak to, as they believe he may have some useful information. So if you recognise him, please do get in touch. Our team are ready to take your call.
It's such a shocking crime. Now, in September last year, we asked for your help with a terrible case of a rape of a 15-year-old girl on a busy day at Bournemouth Beach. Despite receiving lots of calls, which led to some new lines of inquiry, the police still need your help. Earlier on, I met the officer leading that investigation. But first, here is a reminder of what happened that day. And we should warn you, some viewers may find this distressing to watch.
It was a beautiful day, sun was shining, everyone seemed to be going to the beach. Felt like freedom from all the lockdown we've all been going through. We went late morning, I think. The beach was already really busy. We found a spot by the pier up by the steps near the road. I remember there being a big sign saying amusements and an elephant ride or something close to us. We spent the day chilling out, having fun, sunbathing. We did that for a few hours. It was around 4 p.m. we went into the water. My friends and I had a ball that we were playing with, just throwing it about. One throw and it landed next to a man, a boy. I was like, will you give me my ball back? And he was like, no. So I went closer to him and said, can I have my ball back? He gave it to me and I threw it to my friend. But before I could leave him, he started to touch my arm and said, come with me. At the same time, another man was making my friend uncomfortable in the water, so she decided to get out of the sea. I was alone now, and the guy started pulling me out to deeper water and I couldn't feel my feet on the seafloor. It's then he started touching me and I was telling him no and to get off me. No one could see what was happening. That's when he raped me. After a while, his friend came over and he stopped and I managed to get back to the shore. I was in tears. I told my friend what had happened. I was really hurting, so I went to the toilet. Then the guy came up to me again and was asking how to contact me. Eventually, my friend made him go away, and that's the last I saw of him. Since what happened, it's really changed me. I can't face going out. I just feel frightened and vulnerable. I'm so scared and worried that people will judge me for what happened. I didn't ask for this. I tried to stop him, but I couldn't.
Still as distressing as ever to watch now as it was back in September. I'm joined by DI Wayne Seymour from Dorset Police. Hi, Wayne. Before we start, can I just ask, how is that young victim doing now?
Good morning. She's understandably still very shaken and upset. She's been incredibly brave in coming forward and talking to us.
Now, since we last appealed on this case, there has been a development in the investigation. Are you able to share with us what that is?
Yes, I am. We did arrest an individual. Someone came forward with some information. That person was released without charge, as we were able to eliminate them quite quickly from the investigation due to the DNA evidence that we were able to collect at the time. I know there were lots of people on the beach that day, and that's why I'm back today to ask for people to have a think as to whether they were there on the beach, if they saw anything, no matter how small, to give us a call, as it could be the piece of information that I need.
You say there was a lot of people on the beach. It was because it was one of the hottest days of the year. We can see images now of what a busy beach would look like at the time, truly packed. So can you tell us whereabouts on Bournemouth Beach this actually occurred?
As the footage is playing there, it was to the left of the pier, to the area in front of and near to the ocean area, and down more into the sea.
And we can just see that on the image there. So I urge everyone to take a good look at that and cast their minds back. Now, the brave victim was able to create an e-fit of the offender. Are you able to talk us through the description?
Yes, the victim described the offender as being 17 years old, mixed race, possibly Asian with dark hair. He wasn't very tall, probably around 5'6", and he was slim with a muscular build. He had an earring in his left ear, a shaved eyebrow, and his hair looked like it had been recently cut. The male also told the victim he was from Birmingham and his name was Dabby. The victim also said that the male was wearing grey or black swim shorts.
Okay, we really need to identify the offender, and you touched on it earlier, the forensic evidence is crucial here because you can eliminate anyone that is nothing to do with this. So if anyone does recognise that e-fit, names can be suggested to you and no one is going to get into trouble if they're nothing to do with this.
That's correct. I can easily eliminate people due to the DNA evidence that I have. I would urge anybody who has their suspicions or ideas as to who the person responsible is to please call in and give us that name.
OK, Wayne, thank you. So, were you in the area on the 18th of July last year, or do you recognise this man? He's supposedly from Birmingham, but he could be in the wider area of the West Midlands. He called himself Dabby, and he was on Bournemouth Beach on the hottest day of summer last year. If any of this looks or sounds familiar to you, then please do get in touch. The number to call is 08000 468 999. Lines are open until midday and it's completely free to call, remember. You can also text us 24 hours a day on 63399. Text the word crime, leave a space, then write your message. Text will be charged at your standard message rate, or you can send us an email. The address is cwl@bbc.co.uk. Please do get in touch. Even the smallest details in this case could provide useful clues to the police investigation.
Back in 2001, we featured the case of Hilda Lockhart, who died on her 86th birthday after being robbed of her possessions outside her home in Brixton. Here's the story of how the dedicated work of a team of detectives finally found the people responsible. Hilda Lockhart was a retired dinner lady who'd lived in Brixton in South London most of her life. Her nephew Brian still has fond memories of his Auntie Hilda.
She was like a second mother, really. She had no children of her own, and she tended to treat us as her children. She was just a nice person. I'd never heard her say an ill word about anybody.
Although in her 80s, Hilda would regularly walk to see her husband Ted in his care home and was fiercely independent.
She was very active. Used to walk all around the markets because she lived in Brixton, and she was always walking around the market.
But on the 30th of April 2001, as she came back from a shopping trip, she was attacked outside her home.
As she approached the steps up into her flat, two youths attacked her. They pulled her bag and they yanked her bag and pulled her off the stairs. They then stole that bag and ran down the alleyway. Hilda suffered some injuries. She's covered in bruises to her arm and her back of her head, and she also suffered a broken leg, and she was taken off to hospital.
Just over 2 weeks after the attack, while Hilda was still in hospital, she went into cardiac arrest. It was her 86th birthday.
I suddenly got a call from the hospital saying she's taken a turn for the worse. And I dashed down and I was just too late, she just died. We was very, very shocked to think this could happen to Hilda. Who was just a defensive old woman who was just going about her normal business.
At that point, the police were informed and we opened up a homicide investigation.
What had started as a robbery was now being investigated as manslaughter. In 2001, CCTV coverage of the area was very limited, and with no witnesses to the attack, police turned to Crimewatch.
Let me tell you a little bit about Hilda. She lived in Brixton since 1939. She was a school dinner lady until well into her 60s. She didn't have any children of her own, but she doted on her nephews and nieces. Look, this is her with her great niece in this photo here. If you know who killed her, give us a call.
Detectives had descriptions of the suspects, but it wasn't enough to identify them.
Suspects were described as young black males, one wearing a baseball cap. The description of clothing was very generalistic and didn't assist the investigation greatly.
With no other leads, detectives concentrated on the little evidence they did have.
So the focus became the clothing that Hilda was wearing and the shopping bag that we'd recovered. We decided to send those off to be forensically examined.
The results came back, and the bag was found to have traces of DNA from a number of different people. In this mixed DNA profile, one name stood out that police focused on.
Junior Young lived in an adjoining block. He'd come to our notice before and had been arrested for robberies in the past. He was arrested and interviewed for the offence, which he fully denied.
But the mixed DNA profile just wasn't clear enough to bring charges, and Junior Young walked free. John Foster is a forensic consultant for the Metropolitan Police. He worked on the original investigation.
The results we got back from the lab on the bag were a mixed, weak profile. We couldn't say with a high enough degree of certainty that this was Junior Young. The technology just wasn't there to support that type of statistical analysis.
But technology develops all the time, and serious cases like this are reviewed every 3 years.
We were aware of a technique being developed which allowed for mixed profiles to be interpreted using a piece of software. This technology would allow us to be able to provide some form of evidence. We decided to resubmit the profile to see if we could unpick the mixture and provide that statistic that would break the case.
The DNA hadn't changed, but the way it could be analysed had. This gave detectives the breakthrough they'd been waiting for.
The results that we got back from the lab allowed us to be able to say that Junior Young was represented in this DNA profile to a likelihood ratio of 1 in a billion, which means the probability is 1 billion times more likely to be Junior Young than another person. It's the first time I've seen a result like that on a mixed profile.
It was the evidence police needed to finally bring charges.
Junior Young was actually inside at the time for another robbery offence and was a serving prisoner. And we actually went to prison and further interviewed Junior Young. He didn't answer any questions, and we decided that we will present the case now to the CPS again.
On the 22nd of November last year, Junior Young was convicted of the manslaughter of Hilda Lockett.
It's incredibly satisfying after almost 20 years to put someone like Junior Young away. He'd continued to commit crime routinely throughout those 20 years, and that was more and more vulnerable victims that suffered at the hands of him.
He was sentenced to 18 years in prison, but the second person involved still has not been traced.
Hopefully one day we may get developments, or maybe Junior himself will even come forward and identify that person, but there will always be that nagging doubt that someone out there was still responsible for this.
For Hilda's family and her nephew Brian, it's been a long wait for justice.
Well, we never would have believed that after 20 years, that finally they'd caught somebody and charged them.
But first today, we're appealing for your help with the senseless murder of dad of 3, Leroy Mitchell.
He loved people and he just wanted the best for everyone.
Father of 3, Leroy Mitchell, lived in Croydon with his family.
He was a hard-working dad, and he recently just got a job with Royal Mail. Everything was for family, especially his 3 kids was first.
For Leroy's niece, Chardonnay, her uncle was a central figure for the whole family.
We was very close. He was always there for us. He took my sister to her first interview at college to make sure she was there all right. And he was so supportive towards me when I was in school. And he just wanted everyone to be happy.
One Friday night in October last year, Leroy was out with a friend in Croydon. They visited some bars in the town and met a few people along the way. They'd made friends with a woman who decided to join them when they carried on the night at a silent disco. The party was in a small ground floor flat on Birdhurst Road in Croydon. And it was busy when they got there, with more than 50 people listening to music on headphones and dancing together. At around 5 a.m, Leroy went out to the car park. While he was outside, his life came to a tragic and abrupt end.
Well, it was early Saturday morning when my sister come running in with the phone in her hand. She was like, get up, his dad. Something about Leroy, he's dead. We was in disbelief. We wasn't quite understanding what's happening. It's 7:15 in the morning. My mum took the phone and she tried to talk to my dad. And he was crying and couldn't get his words out. And once he told us, he said he was at a party and he's dead.
Leroy had died at the scene after a single gunshot wound to his head.
He didn't deserve this. He only went out to have a nice time. He had a good job to start on the Monday. He had 3 kids he had to take to school. And it's just gone.
Leroy's family don't know why his life was taken.
It's so hard. It's hard, we're upset, we're angry, we're confused. Just want to know why. Why did it happen to him? You know, what has he done? We don't understand. he went out for a party and then he never come back.
The family are desperate for anyone who knows what happened that night to come forward so they can move on with their lives.
But just think if you were sitting here, or was like my nan that's going out of her mind, wondering why her son's not here. Imagine if it was you. It's destroyed so many lives, and it's going to take a lot for people to get back on track, because he was just everyone's right-hand man.
I'm joined by DCI Catherine Goodwin from the Met now. Thank you for joining us, Catherine. We saw just how heartbroken the family are in the film. How are they coping now?
Thank you. I mean, as you can imagine, Leroy's family, friends are absolutely devastated at his tragic murder and desperate for answers as to what happened.
Understandably. So let's start by recapping the key events that happened that night.
On that night, we know that Leroy had been out with some friends in Croydon town centre to a number of bars and clubs. And at some point that evening, he went on to the house party, which was being held in a flat in Birdhurst Road.
We can just see that on the map there. And what do you know about that party?
So the party was a silent disco type party with headphones. They were quite popular during the pandemic as a way for people to meet up, and then continued obviously after restrictions had been lifted. We know that Leroy and a friend went on to the party. It was being held in the ground floor flat, in a small flat, and sort of into the garden area out the back.
And quite a number of people were believed to be there.
Yeah, between sort of 50 and 150 at various points throughout the night.
OK, so quite a lot of people were there. So far, have any of those people come forward with information?
So we have spoken to a number of people who are at the party, but we know that the vast majority haven't yet spoken to us, and they may just have vital information, which is what we're appealing for today.
And any information could be key. So let's just remind people of what Leroy was wearing on the night, just in case it jogs anyone's memory. You've got some CCTV. Talk us through this, Catherine.
Yeah, so we've got some CCTV of Leroy just a few hours before he went to the party. This is him at a nightclub in Croydon town centre, wearing a dark hoodie with quite a distinctive logo, dark trousers and trainers.
And these are in the bars in central Croydon before he then moved on to the party. Now, you've mentioned there that there were a lot of people at this party, possibly 50, possibly significantly more. Many of those may well know what happened to Leroy at the party that led to his death. If they haven't come forward as yet and they needed that extra incentive, there is one that's been put up, a financial one.
Yes, so we're grateful that Crime Stoppers have put up a reward of up to £20,000 for information which leads to the conviction of the persons or people responsible for Leroy's tragic murder. And we know that he was a very popular man in the Croydon area, and lots of people are desperate for answers as to this.
They certainly are, and let's hope that people do come forward with the answers the family so desperately need. Catherine, thank you. But hopefully we will have some calls coming in today that can help this investigation, because this is a community and a family who are distraught. So, can you help give them and the police some answers? Please do get in touch. Now, last year, we ran an appeal about an attack that took place in a beauty spot in Nuneaton. Earlier today, I spoke to DC Megan Day from Warwickshire Police to find out about any developments. But first, here's a reminder of what happened.
Sue Watkins lives near Nuneaton in Warwickshire.
I've been here 10 years. I'm actually from London, which you can probably hear in the accent.
Every day she loves to go and visit a nearby country park, Harts Hills Hayes.
It's woodland, surrounded by a park as well. It's an amazing, peaceful place, surrounded by nature, and it's a great de-stressing place to go.
The park is well known for its panoramic views over the surrounding countryside.
I walk in the park every day for exercise.
At around 7:45 a.m. on the 13th of February last year, Sue parked her car and headed into the park.
I pull up and I put my earpods in to listen to music, which helps me focus on the day's events. It was cold, very, very cold, very crisp, very quiet, peaceful. Not many people around, just me and the birds and the trees.
Sue made her way up to one of her favourite spots. She stopped to take a photograph.
I'd got to halfway through the walk and I'd stopped. There was a bird of prey and I was trying to catch it on my phone.
But the peaceful moment was suddenly shattered.
I just suddenly felt this arm come over my shoulder to grab my phone and reacted as you would if something made you jump and lashed my arm back. And I actually think I hit him at that point.
She managed to put her phone into her pocket, but the man on the bike wasn't about to give up.
I think I must have infuriated him because he then punched me in the face. There was blood everywhere, so it was all over him and it was all over me.
Suddenly, the man pulled out a knife.
He pulled this knife out of a pocket, flick knife, and flicked it. The sound lives with me. And then he started lunging this knife at my face and my throat, and I remember thinking that I wasn't going to see anybody again. Just an overwhelming, I'm going to die. But I'm just lucky that my arm was up to defend myself. But I felt the blade go through my coat, and I felt my skin sting, so I knew he'd got me with the blade.
But then, without warning, and without her phone, he got on his bike and fled.
I don't know whether he then panicked and rode off. He rode one way, and I managed to get myself together to walk the other way very quickly and literally picked up the phone and dialed 999. And they stayed with me for half an hour on the telephone, the guy who was absolutely amazing and kept me calm and didn't leave me until the police and the ambulance were there waiting.
Police arrived on the scene quickly and scoured the area, but the man was nowhere to be found. The attack had a huge impact on Sue.
I feel angry. I can't sleep. I keep waking up, reliving the whole event, and especially the knife, the sound of the knife flicking open. And every time I put my glasses on my nose, I can constantly feel the pain where he cracked me on the nose. And every time I walk down the street and someone's got a hoodie on, I'm automatically looking to see if it's his face. I'm trying really hard to carry on with everything that I'm doing and, you know, not let it completely change my life, but I think it has. I think it will live with me forever.
And I'm now joined by DC Megan Day from Warwickshire Police. Welcome, Megan. Can you just update us on the investigation since you last appealed on Crimewatch?
The appeal last year really helped to spark some conversation around what happened to Sue that day. Sue has actually started to set up her own self-defence training course following what happened to her, with reports that more than 300 people signed up within the first 24 hours of her announcing her plans. I think it's been really important to her to try and help others hopefully know what to do to try and protect themselves should they come up against anything similar to what she experienced. But we're still trying to find the person responsible for Sue's attack, and we're still appealing to the public to help us put a name to this person.
So can you remind us of the key details of what happened?
Yes, this happened on Saturday, the 13th of February, 2021, at around 8:15 a.m. at Harthill Hayes Country Park in Nuneaton. So Sue had entered the park from Albury Road at around 7:45 a.m. and had been walking for around 30 minutes before the incident took place near to a kissing gate at the northern end of the park. After the attack, the suspect then fled on his bike towards the southern end of the park.
And it's worth mentioning that it's a violent attack from the suspect. A weapon was used. He pulled out a blade which was described as a flick knife style. Can you give us any information about that?
Well, yes, this man was said to have threatened her with a knife, which is described as a flick knife. And this does suggest that he had some intention to commit a crime like this. And the fact that he injured Sue during this ordeal shows that he wasn't afraid to use it or to cause harm to someone.
Yeah, absolutely right. We'll just see an image of a similar type of blade on the screen there. So clearly we need to find this person. What can you tell us about the suspect?
Okay, so we're looking for anybody who was walking in the area that day just before Valentine's Day last year to get in touch. This is a really popular walking spot for locals due to its beautiful surroundings. So we're hoping this might jog the memory of anyone who may have been in the area and seen anything suspicious. We're also appealing to anybody who may have CCTV footage stored from the surrounding areas and nearby housing estates to please check their systems, just in case they may have picked up anybody matching the description we have of this person. That person has been described as a skinny white male, around 5'10" in height, wearing a black hoodie, black jogging bottoms, a snood-like scarf covering his face, and was wearing white trainers. And one thing that particularly stood out, described by Sue, is it had really distinctive dark eyebrows. He also rode a black mountain bike, which looked as though it was painted grey. And it's worth noting that the smell of cannabis was present from the attacker during this incident.
Yeah, lots of details there, Megan. Hopefully someone knows who this person is. Thank you for joining us. So, can you help?
Now, in 2019, a 63-year-old Marion Price was fatally shot in a car outside a home in Northamptonshire. This is the story of how detectives tracked down the man responsible.
My mum was kind, thoughtful, funny. She was definitely funny.
She was really, really bubbly, always smiling, happy. She used to sing around the house a lot.
She was there for me, with the kids, for me and my brother. She was lovely.
When 63-year-old Marion Price was found murdered outside her flat in a small village near Northampton in December 2019, it led to one of the most complex investigations detectives there had ever faced, and revealed a dark story of domestic abuse, greed, and revenge. Detective Superintendent Joe Banfield was the detective in charge of the case.
This investigation is one that will stay with me forever. He controlled where she spent her money, who she spent her money on, where she went, what she did. She left him and he just wouldn't let go. He intended to kill Marion. He'd planned for weeks, if not months, to kill her. But proving that in court is an entirely different prospect.
The man police suspected of her murder was a person Marion's two grown-up children knew only too well. Her ex-husband, Michael Reeder.
My mum was on her own for a little while after divorcing my dad. And then she met Mike online. The first time I met him, which I think was about 6 weeks later, and we'd gone for a meal, I'd taken the boys, my husband, and straight away she was flashing this engagement ring at me.
The first time I met him was when my mum was already living with him. It was all very quick. Just something didn't feel right. I was trying to figure out what my mum had seen in this guy to want to marry him, and I just couldn't figure out why.
He'd play the nice guy, the good guy. He built a tree house in the garden for the boys. And I'd be kind of like, oh, well, maybe he's all right, you know, he's not that bad.
It seemed like he was charming the right people.
But not long after she married Rita in 2012, there were signs that Marion was deeply unhappy.
I could see that, you know, she was coming round, she wasn't putting makeup on. She was starting to look really tired.
It was the beginning of a pattern of abusive and controlling behaviour.
It seemed to be like a running thing at Christmas. He would do something that he knew would upset my mum, which would be to cancel Christmas in effect.
Christmas dinner one year, she ended up coming over on her own. Quite devastated, just said that they'd had an argument and he wasn't coming over. And then when she went home, he'd taken all the Christmas decorations down. It was just control, I suppose. Seeing my mum go from this bubbly, happy person to half of the woman she was, it was just upsetting.
Finally, after 4 years of marriage, Marion found the courage to leave her abusive husband. But it didn't put an end to Rita's obsessive and controlling behaviour.
Domestic abuse was at the heart of this offence, and he was controlling enough that even when she was brave enough to leave him, he wouldn't let her be.
With the help of his friend, former mechanic Stephen Welch, Rita had a tracking device planted on Marion's car.
Michael used that device for months. He was stalking her. He was trying to understand her movements because he was very jealous of her, because he didn't understand why she'd left him, and he couldn't come to terms with that.
In 2017, Marion took him to court, saying Rita had attacked her with a mallet. But despite her injuries, he was acquitted. Marion started formal divorce proceedings, hoping to finally move on with her life.
He didn't reply for about a year, I think. Then she put her house up for sale, and all of a sudden he got involved and wants a divorce. I believe he was hoping to get money out of her. That's my thinking.
But in the final divorce settlement, the judge had ordered him to pay Marion Price £10,000. And this was not something that Rita was prepared to do.
The fact that the court had awarded money to her from him seems to have been the thing that tipped the balance.
Once again, Rita turned to his friend the mechanic, and together they plotted her murder.
They planned it meticulously. They intended for it to happen. It's very difficult to get into that mindset or to understand, really, because actually this is probably over £10,000 potentially, which doesn't really sound like an awful lot of money to take a life.
On the 15th of December 2019, just 6 days after the court had ordered him to pay Marion £10,000, Michael Reeder carried out his plan. While Marion was in her car, Reeder walked up, pointed a shotgun at her face, and pulled the trigger.
The fact that Marion had a seatbelt on and a cigarette in one hand and the keys in the other when she was found led us to believe that she had only just arrived, she hadn't had time to get out of her car, and that she was murdered by somebody who was waiting for her.
Reeder was immediately suspected. Police quickly brought him in.
Michael was arrested at his home address. He'd poured himself a gin and tonic and was eating a Magnum ice cream at the time of his arrest.
Pop your lolly down somewhere for my friend. I need to have a chat with you.
But he very much tried to portray an image of, oh, I've been at home. What's all this about, officer?
I'm arresting you on suspicion of murder of your ex-partner.
Detectives had a suspect, but no evidence.
We hadn't found a mobile phone at his address, and he'd been very clear with the officers attending, I don't have a phone here, almost smirking as to say, I haven't got it.
But his bank record showed he'd been paying a phone bill. And calls from that phone linked Reader to his accomplice, Stephen Welch, and the tracking device.
The more we investigated this case, the darker it got. Our intelligence team start looking at the call data, and what we can see is that Michael Reader and Stephen Welch have been backwards and forwards to Marion's address on a number of occasions. So we start being able to see a pattern.
The phone data revealed the pair's exact movements on the day of Marion's murder.
Michael Reader goes to Earls Barton and the flats where Marion lived. The offence happens and then he flees. We then know that he met up with Stephen Welch at a rural location close by where we believe they got rid of the weapon and the motorbike, and we know that Stephen Welch then took Michael Reader back to his home address, took away the tracking device and Michael Reader's phone with him, went home, left all that stuff at his home address and then flew to Alicante thinking he'd got away with it.
Welch was arrested on his return from Spain. And although police never found the murder weapon, they did find gunshot residue on a jacket belonging to Reader. And there was one other thing he couldn't deny.
It was clear that he was the only person with a motivation to kill her. It was clear that he was the only person that gained.
Reader and his accomplice Welch were both convicted of Marion's murder and sentenced to life in prison.
There's an initial moment of elation because you think, brilliant, we've nailed them. But what really comes across very quickly is that it makes no difference to the family because Marion isn't brought back by that.
It's been horrible. Yeah. We're all devastated.
I think people that are in an abusive relationship don't always know they're in an abusive relationship until it's too late. I would say people around the person in the relationship will probably notice before they do. Tell a friend, tell the police if it's that bad, just tell anyone.
It really is an awful case of coercive control and domestic violence happened. Now, back in 2016, we appealed for information to help Yorkshire police to try and identify the man responsible for carrying a woman down an alley and raping her. Here's the story of how detectives were finally able to identify and arrest the person responsible. Just to warn you, you may find this distressing.
In 2015, West Yorkshire Police were on the hunt for a dangerous criminal. In August that year, a well-dressed man was prowling the streets of Leeds city centre. In the early hours of the morning, he approached a 24-year-old woman who was walking along Kirkgate to get a taxi home.
You hear things like this happening, but never think it will happen to you.
He then picked her up and carried her to a secluded doorway in nearby Mark Lane, where he raped her.
After the attack, I felt as though I had lost my self-worth. I felt so nervous all the time. I want this person to understand that his actions that night were totally unacceptable.
It was a crime that would shock the country.
This particular offence from 2015 always resonated with me. It was the one that I really wanted to solve.
Pat Twiggs was the detective who led the investigation.
We conducted, obviously, a major investigation at the time, which involved many, many hours of collecting, sifting and viewing CCTV, literally hundreds and hundreds of hours. We interviewed many, many members of the public And we were fortunate enough to get a DNA profile as a result of the offence. But unfortunately, it wasn't on the national database. It just didn't lead us anywhere ultimately.
Despite months of investigation, police were unable to identify the attacker. They turned to Crimewatch to ask viewers for their help.
First, police desperately need your help to identify the man who attacked a young woman in Leeds city centre.
Patrick, you've released some extremely shocking footage. What do we know about this man?
Well, we know that he's an Afro-Caribbean male with a shaven head. We believe he's aged between 30 to 40 years old, over 6 foot tall. And at the time of the attack, he was wearing a long, dark-coloured trench coat and had the appearance of an old-style doorman. Do you remember seeing a man in this distinctive dress carrying a lady? If you do, please come forward.
Patrick, thank you very much. Rav, back to you.
Yeah, do take one final look at that CCTV image. This man really does need to be caught.
One of the challenges as the senior investigation officer is always to try and keep the case alive in the eye of the public. And that's why at the time we were really grateful for the support of the media.
As part of the appeal, detectives took the decision to release the shocking CCTV of the moments before the attack.
It is truly horrifying. You see a young woman there, helpless, in the arms of this big male, literally carrying her off to be seriously assaulted. And that is the most frightening aspect of this crime, that she was defenceless, really. It's still as harrowing now as it was when I first viewed it in 2015. And clearly that was the image that has really resonated with the public. We did think long and hard about releasing that particular piece of footage because of the potential impact in terms of fear of crime that it would have on the general public. It wasn't an easy decision, but actually then we just thought the impact of that, to try and then raise awareness and try and get a name, was the right thing to do.
But the appeal didn't throw up any new leads. With no new information, the identity of the man responsible remained a mystery. But the investigation was never closed, and detectives still had the perpetrator's DNA. And it was this that would eventually give them a name, more than 6 years later.
Sadly, in this case, it took another woman to be attacked last year in September in Leeds for the identity of the suspect to come to light. A woman was attacked in her own home by a delivery driver. As a result of some local inquiries at the time, his identity became apparent fairly quickly. He was swiftly arrested, brought into custody, and his DNA was taken as part of the custody process.
And when they compared this to the national DNA database, they got a hit, matching the offender detectives had been trying to find for more than 6 years. A man called Austin Osayende.
What it does emphasise is the amount of importance that forensic science plays in the detection of crime. It's absolutely vital, and that's something that we obviously will continue to focus on.
At Leeds Crown Court in February this year, Osayende pleaded guilty to both offences and was given a life sentence.
When the verdict and sentence was read out in court, it was a moment of elation, and particularly because the victim from 2015 had had the courage to come into court and read out her victim personal statement, which was really, really powerful. And you could see that had an impact on the judge and the court. It was a moment of closure, definitely for both victims, because both their lives have been turned upside down in immeasurable ways that the public can only really start to imagine.
But this is not the end of the investigation.
One thing that's always been on my mind is when someone commits 2 serious offences of this nature with a time span of 6, nearly 7 years apart, as an investigator, naturally you think, what's he been doing in between? We may have other victims out there who may not have reported this, may not have told anybody. And I think this is another opportunity now to reach out to those victims to say, do you think you were a victim at the hands of this man? If so, please come forward, put your trust in us, and we will do our level best to investigate those offences and to seek justice for you as well.
As detectives in that film said, this type of offence is rare, but if you recognise Austin Asoyende and you think you may have had a similar experience to this, then do get in touch with them, as they want to ensure that all of his victims get justice.
Thank you.
Now we're asking for your help to find the person responsible for the murder of Jin Ming Zhang. I'm joined by DI Jim Mahon. Jim, what can you tell us about the circumstances of this murder?
Yeah, so the police got a call just before 7 p.m. on Wednesday the 9th of February to Mosley Street, which is in the Digbeth area of Birmingham. When the police arrived, they unfortunately found that Mr Zhang had been stabbed to death inside a flat within that street.
OK, so what do we know about the victim at this point?
So he was 41 years old. He's got many friends in the local Birmingham Chinese community. He was known locally as Ming.
OK, and at the moment, do you have any idea what the motive could be?
We're keeping an open mind on the motive, so we're hoping that, that our inquiries and any information that comes in will help us understand who and why who killed Mr Zhang and why he was killed.
Those all-important questions. Now, you do have 2 bits of CCTV you're going to show us today. Talk us through this first piece. What are we looking at here? Because this is a potential witness to what happened.
Yeah, so this first piece is of a key witness, so we're really keen to speak to this man or this man to come forward to us because we think he might have some vital information. He was in the area at the time and might not know the importance of his presence within that area.
OK, so hopefully we can find out who that person is. And we've got another clip here. Talk us through this, Jim. What are we seeing here in the significance?
So this male here is someone that we are keen to ask some questions. He was in the area at the time and may have some vital information. What we know about him, he's a black male. He was wearing a face mask. He's between the heights of 5'2" and 5'5", I believe he may be in his 20s.
We're just going to play that CCTV again there, Jim, because I know one of the things that's interesting about this particular clip is the person seems to walk with a slightly unique gait.
And I think that's what we're hoping people would recognise is that peculiar walk, that sort of different type of walk, that gait that you can see on the
Could be enough for someone to know who that is, and as you say, that person may well have some vital information you'd like to find out who that person is. Now, this is important because you've got some forensic evidence that could be crucial as part of this investigation in eliminating people.
Yes, so we've got some DNA. We've run that through the database, and it's not identified anybody on the database. So, if people do want to give us a name, we will be able to eliminate people from the inquiry, so people don't need to think that they are putting anyone in any trouble if they put forward a name.
Yeah, it's really, really important that. Thank you, Jim. Now, there's also, if anyone needs that further incentive to get in touch, there's a financial reward as well.
Yes, Crime Stoppers are offering £10,000 for anyone that gives information that leads to the arrest and prosecution of someone for this crime.
OK, really, really important. Jim, thank you for joining us today. Hopefully some useful calls will come in. So have a good look at this image. Do you recognise this man? Police believe, as they say, he may have some vital information about this case. Please do get in touch if you know who that is. But first, 30 years ago, DC Jim Morrison was fatally stabbed whilst off duty in the middle of London, just weeks before Christmas of 1991. Can you help with any information to get justice for Jim's family and colleagues?
It was August 1988 when Victoria and Jim Morrison were married.
Sometimes you come across people that you just instantly click with, and that's what happened to us, really.
Jim had been a constable with the Metropolitan Police for 5 years. Living and working in central London, he dealt mostly with street crime.
Jim absolutely loved his job. You couldn't really imagine him doing anything else.
He built a reputation as a hard-working and popular officer, and in 1991, he was selected to become a detective constable.
Crime mattered to him. He would be interested in what was going on, but obviously, particularly in Covent Garden, where he lived, he was loved by the community there, and he knew so many people. See you later.
Okay. We did talk about the dangers that he had as a police officer, but they're just sort of in the background. They're not to the forefront of your mind. It's just something that's there. And obviously, most of the time, you don't think it's going to be happening to you.
Hey, Rob.
Less than 2 weeks before Christmas in 1991, Jim had clocked off and was enjoying a drink in a pub in Covent Garden.
Oh, that one, yeah. Straight out.
It was busy that night, and police believe the area was targeted by a gang of bag snatchers.
Oh, no.
On his way home from the pub, it's thought Jim came across one of the gang and confronted him.
What you got there, sir? I'm a police officer. You coming with me? Okay, stop. That's it. Enough. You're next, sir. Back off. Hey, you're next. You're coming with me. I'm a police officer. Now, you just hold. Put that knife away.
Despite the danger, investigators believe Jim chased the thief through the streets of central London. At Montreal Place, just off the Strand, the chase stopped and took a deadly turn.
The first I knew that something had happened was a colleague of Jim's coming to the flat and telling me that there'd been an accident and that Jim had been taken to St Bart's Hospital. At that point, I had been told that he'd been stabbed, but hadn't been given any details as to how serious it was. A doctor came out and said, "We're really sorry, but there wasn't anything that we could do."
He was just 26.
Police are calling for witnesses to the murder of an off-duty detective constable.
The Met launched a massive investigation to find the man responsible for his death, including an appeal on Crimewatch.
What we want is anyone who was in the Maple Leaf Public House the 13th of December, it's a Friday evening, to come forward, because it's possible they have seen the man who stabbed Jim Morrison.
Stacks of information come in on...
Despite some promising phone calls and new lines of inquiry, police could still not identify the killer. And as the years passed, the investigation struggled to find any new information. But the case is still being investigated. It's now in the hands of Detective Chief Inspector Rebecca Reeves. She's determined to solve the case, no matter how long it takes.
It was absolutely Jim's character and his dedication to duty that meant that he could not walk by.
The fact that he was off duty really didn't come into the equation, because if he saw something that wasn't quite right, whether he was on or off duty, it would be the same response from him.
He wouldn't give up until he had done everything he could to try and stop that man. And I think that makes it even more important that we don't give up either.
During the original investigation, witnesses had come forward to identify stolen items that had been scattered during the chase. This gave detectives crucial information about the suspect.
We do believe from the witness descriptions and the information in the investigation that the suspect could be of North African descent. It could be somebody who was living, working in London at the time. I believe that the suspect himself or one of the group that he was with will have confided in someone about what happened. Every year in this investigation, we make progress, but we have still not had that significant breakthrough that we want in order to identify the right offender, and that's why we're making this appeal.
Jim's friends and family have waited a long time to see his killer brought to justice.
He should be here now, enjoying his retirement, as I am. It's not right, and I'd like to see justice done. I'd like to see... I'm sure if the boot was on the other foot, so to speak, Jim would be sitting here.
This year was the 30th anniversary, so it was sort of quite an impact, really. I don't think it gets any easier. I think you just learn to live with it. When you lose somebody around Christmas time, I wouldn't say it has a bigger impact, but it certainly does have that sort of family longing. Walking around Covent Garden when you first see the tree go up is a memory that I have every year. I don't think I can give up, or I'm not ready to give up just yet. The family, friends, colleagues would like to see justice for Jim.
Joining us today is Detective Chief Inspector Rebecca Reeves, who we just saw in the film is investigating this case. Thank you for coming in, Rebecca. You took over this investigation last year, and in that time, what have you learnt about Jim?
Spending time with Jim's family and colleagues, I've been struck by what a dedicated and talented police officer he was, and also very popular with his colleagues. He had been with the Met for 8 years. It was something from when he was a boy he had wanted to be a police officer, and he had recently in 1991 been successfully selected to become a detective constable, the job he wanted and he loved. So he'd moved from where he had started out as a PC in the West End division to Leman Street in East London, and he had so much ahead of him. He never made it home safely that night.
It's just heartbreaking. I mean, he's clearly incredibly passionate about his job. So can you just remind us about the key events of what happened on that night?
Yes, so 13th of December 1991, and Jim clocked off work in Leman Street at about 6 o'clock, and he went for a drink nearby with colleagues. Then later on, around 8, he made his way to the Covent Garden area, and he went for a drink in his local pub, which was the Nell Gwyn Tavern, which you can see on the map. And he left there around 9:35, and it was somewhere close by, shortly after that time, that Jim noticed a man acting suspiciously. We know that there was a team of bag thieves operating, stealing handbags, wallets from people in the pubs, very busy pubs nearby in Covent Garden. And it must be that Jim came across something, and by instinct he knew what was going on and that he had to detain that suspect. Maybe he saw them going through some stolen property, and he had to step in.
So we can see here on the map, it was near to the London Transport Museum, which is in the sort of Covent Garden area. Now, this is initially where we believe Jim challenged this suspect. What happened from there?
Yes, so a witness around 10 p.m. sees Jim. He's detaining the suspect up against the doors of the London Transport Museum at the heart of Covent Garden. It's at that point that this man produces a knife and threatens Jim with that. He turns as if he's going to run, and Jim throws off his outer coat, his suit jacket onto the floor, and the suspect does run off, and Jim gives chase through the streets of Covent Garden.
So Jim's already been threatened with a knife. Anyone else would just back off, but Jim, being the diligent officer that he was, gave chase. And we can see here where they went, and then what happened after.
It's in Montreal Place, just across the Strand, that Jim was fatally injured. He was stabbed 3 times by the man.
It's just heartbreaking. It really is. So clearly we need to identify who was responsible. What do we know about the suspect?
The suspect is described by witnesses, and there were many witnesses who came forward who saw what happened when that chase was taking place, as a man, slim build, average build, dark hair, age between 27 and 30 years old. So today, that man would be in his late 50s or his 60s.
Really important to make that point, actually, that they would have aged significantly. OK.
And he's described as being of Mediterranean or North African descent. His clothes, dark clothing, and a distinctive jacket, a waist-length dark brown or black leather bomber jacket with a zip up the front and a flap across the collar.
Okay, and as you say, look, it's a busy area. There were lots of potential witnesses around. People would have seen this. People would have known what's happened. If anyone did need any further incentive to come forward and give you that information, there is a huge financial reward that's been put up by both the Met Police and the independent charity Crime Stoppers together. If anyone did need that, you just want the information, don't you?
Yes, a very substantial reward that's on offer. And I believe that there is someone out there who does have that missing evidence that we need. Maybe someone who knew the group that this man was part of. 30 years is a long time. People change. If your life has changed a great deal and you now feel able to come forward, please make that call.
Yeah, one call can be all it takes. Rebecca, thank you. I can tell you that reward is in fact £50,000. That's what's being offered for information about Jim Morrison's murder. The reward is only payable for anonymous information given exclusively to Crime Stoppers. You can visit their website or you can call them. Free phone, 0800 555 111. Now, on the 3rd of January 2022, at approximately 1:30 p.m. in Sheffield, a 19-year-old man had just crossed Richmond Hall Road when he was approached by a man who was accusing the victim of damaging his car. The suspect grabbed him by the throat and punched him approximately 9 times in the face. The suspect then proceeded to grab the victim's bag and emptied its contents before stealing their phone and power bank. He then approached the victim's mother, who had witnessed the attack, and shouted, "Where's my money?" to her and reportedly threatened to kill her. The suspect then left Richmond Hall Road in the direction of Richmond Road. Using the victim's description of the man, police have been able to create this e-fit image of the attacker. So, does this man look familiar to you? Or did you witness this attack on the 3rd of January 2022? If so, please do get in touch. The contact details are on your screens.
Now, in the 12 months up to March 2021, there were over 124,000 hate crimes recorded by the police in England and Wales. Many of those were motivated by homophobic prejudice. One of those victims is Wayne Harris, and this is what happened to him.
On the 7th of December last year, Wayne, who is partially deaf, was enjoying a drink with his brother in the Turnpike pub in the Soundwell area of Bristol.
I left my drama group about 9 o'clock. I had a couple of drinks with my younger brother in the pub right up to 10:30.
Wayne said goodbye to his brother at the bus stop and started his short 5-minute walk home.
He caught the bus and then I walked home and then everything happened from then.
Wayne didn't know that 3 men were approaching in a car. As he reached the corner of Leicester Square and Gores Hill, an old-style Nissan Micra pulled up alongside him.
They came in that red Nissan car. 2 men got out of the thing and the driver was still in the car.
Police believe one of the men had a knife, and Wayne was subjected to offensive, homophobic language before being shoved to the ground.
Then suddenly I felt someone push.
As he fell, he bashed his knees on the pavement. While Wayne lay on the floor with his knees covered in blood, the men laughed and got back in the car. They then sped off in the direction of Hayward Road.
And then all of a sudden it went shot off down Hayward Road, and I ran all the way back and woke my husband up with panicking.
Wayne's husband, Nick, had been at home all evening.
I was asleep, and then my husband sort of shaking me on my shoulders, and the next thing I know, he's told me that he's got attacked. And then the first thing I see, half his leg covered in blood. So then I had to clean it, bandage it. Then straight away I rang the police.
Both Wayne and Nick have been left extremely traumatised by the attack.
It does sort of make you wary when you're walking around if somebody comes towards you, it's like, what do you want? Back off. You can't even feel safe. 5 meters from your door.
I won't forget the ones who humiliated me. And I don't want no one else to be humiliated.
Such a horrible thing to have to go through. I'm joined now by Sergeant Stuart King from Avon and Somerset Police, who's overseeing this case. Thanks so much for coming in today, Stuart. We could hear from Wayne in the film there. This has had a huge impact on him. He's been left visibly shaken, hasn't he?
It did, yeah. Wayne was very shaken by the incident, and so much so he had to carry a panic alarm with him for some time. Thankfully, though, with the support of his husband, he's now getting there.
That's really good to hear that he's improving. Just remind us of the key details of what happened that night then.
So the attack happened around 10:30 on Thursday, the 7th of December 2021. Wayne had been to the local pub, as we've heard, and he was walking home. When he got to the location of Gorse Hill, near to the junction with Leicester Square, he describes a red, old-style Nissan pulling up alongside him. Two males get out of the vehicle. One, he believed, was armed with a knife, and they've shouted homophobic abuse towards him and then attacked him, which has caused him to sustain injuries to his knee.
Yeah, just horrible. You mentioned the red car. What else do we know about the car and the route that it took?
Yeah, so he describes it as a red Nissan. We believe that it took the route from Soundwell Road before turning into Leicester Square and then pulling up on Gorse Hill where the attack took place. And then the victim describes it leaving via Haywood Road and reversing.
We've also got descriptions of the suspects as well, haven't we? Take us through them.
Yeah, so the first suspect, Wayne describes as a white male aged in his 30s, clean-shaven with a West Country accent. He was wearing a navy blue hooded top, blue jeans and black trainers. And the second male he describes also in his 30s, mixed race, around 5'11" in height, wearing a grey top with a black coat, green camouflage trousers, white trainers and short, dark, plaited hair.
Now, this is being treated as a homophobic attack, a hate crime. What else are Avon and Somerset Police doing to combat crimes like this?
I mean, as you'd expect, we deal with any incident of this nature very seriously, and we follow and pursue all lines of inquiry that will help us identify suspects and bring them to justice.
Stuart, thank you very much. Hopefully we'll get some information about this case this morning. So do you happen to see an old-style red Nissan around the Soundwell area on the 7th of December last year, or did you hear the altercation that night? If you have any information, please do get in touch.
Now, our first appeal we're asking for your help with is the senseless murder of 23-year-old Ian Gualavisi, who was killed just a few months ago in London. Joining us from the Met Police is Detective Chief Inspector Chris Wood. Hello, Chris. Good morning. Can you start by telling us a little bit about Ian and ultimately what happened to him?
Yeah, Ian was a young man just embarking on a new phase of his life as a restaurant manager in his family's restaurant in the Elephant and Castle in London. It was the 14th of December last year. Just after 7:30 p.m, two men have arrived on a stolen moped, rushed into the restaurant and attacked Ian with a very large knife, fatally wounding him at the scene. His mum was present, as were some other regular diners as well.
It's absolutely horrific. So let's go back to the 14th of December when this happened. Can you tell us where in London this occurred?
This is near to the Elephant and Castle train station in the Arches, just near the station there. As you can see on the map there,
so the restaurant is at the top in the pink box. That's where it was. This is the Elephant and Castle, a very, very busy part of London. It's just near the Oval. If anyone's not too familiar with London, they might know where that is. And this is around 7:30 in the evening?
Just after 7:30 in the evening, yeah.
OK, so it's a busy part, lots of people around, and you say two males turned up. What happened then?
Two males turned up on this stolen moped. After a short sort of interaction outside the restaurant, they've then run in. One of them is seen to be brandishing a knife from his waistband. They ran in, attacked Ian very quickly. It was all over in a matter of seconds. Ian sustained one wound, which was fatal.
It's absolutely horrific. Now, you do have some CCTV, and that could be absolutely crucial. Let's have a look at this now, Chris, and tell us what we're seeing.
So these are the two men in question. You can see they're having a bit of a discussion before they go in. And then you see the guy with the high-vis jacket on produce something from his waistband and they run into the restaurant. The clip from inside shows just how quickly this happened. Ian was attacked and they run straight back out again.
I mean, it was so quick. I'm going to play that again, but we can see the two men there. Now, the one in the high-vis jacket, you believe he's pulling something from his waistband
You'll
here?
see his right hand just pull something out of his waistband just before he runs in there. The other guy dressed all in black, we think he probably had a weapon with him because he does keep touching the side of his body, but we don't actually see him brandish one.
And the attack just in seconds, and then they flee. Now, obviously, they're running away at pace. Do you know what happened after the attack?
So afterwards, they get back on the stolen moped. They've then travelled at speed through Burgess Park, and eventually that moped was found a few days later, burnt out in Picton Street on the Elmington estate.
Now, we can see that on the map there, Picton Street. You can see it's not that far away at all from the restaurant in the Elephant and Castle, and clearly you need as much information about not only who was on the moped, but what about the moped itself and any information about it being burnt out as well. What do you know about the suspects themselves?
You can see on the images that we believe they're young men or teenagers. They appeared quite slightly built. They move very quickly, as was seen on the CCTV. The faces are obviously obscured by crash helmets, but the dark clothing, one of them's got a high visibility jacket on. The appeal today is basically to go out to anybody who may recognise these two via their movements and build and the basic descriptions that we've got.
Yeah, we need any names put forward for these people. We need to identify them. But just to hammer home where this occurred, this is a busy part of London. This is a restaurant. There are other restaurants around. This is just before Christmas, 14th of December. And the time of the evening, this is going to be when there's lots of people potentially around. And these are all potential witnesses, aren't they, that you're appealing to today?
These are all potential witnesses. We'd ask anybody to come forward, anybody that saw anything at that time, on that date. Ian's family are still heartbroken, as you would imagine. This is a close-knit Latino community right there near the Elephant and Castle, and people that knew Ian are still feeling the effects of his death.
Understandably. It must have been so traumatic for Ian's mum. Of course, she was there. She lost her son. If anyone is watching this with information they haven't yet given to police, what would you say to them?
I'd say just pick up the phone. We can deal with anything anonymously. Call this programme, call Crime Stoppers. We just need a name. We'll do the rest. It never needs to be revealed where that name has come from.
Chris, thank you. You've heard it there. There is a parent who watched her child die in front of her. So if you have any information, please do pick up the phone and give us a call. Our number is on the screen now. Or, as you heard, you can contact Crime Stoppers. You can do that anonymously. Their number is 0800 555 111.
Responsible for a serious sexual assault against a man in Bristol last year. With us this morning to tell us about the case is DI Andy Fox. Andy, thanks so much for coming in today. Could you talk us through what happened?
Yes, of course. Approximately 3:45 a.m. on the 9th of July last year, the victim was walking alone down Gloucester Road, travelling in the direction of Bristol city centre. At that time, he was approached by a man who engaged him in conversation outside a shop named Chanduni Chow. After approximately 10 minutes of conversation, they walked together to Meridian Terrace, and it is at this point the victim alleges that he was subjected to a serious sexual assault. The victim remembers trying to push the male off him, but unfortunately he was unsuccessful in doing so.
That's just awful. So where does your investigation stand currently then?
So we continue with our forensic inquiries at this time. We conducted a lot of house-to-house, but unfortunately we've reached a bit of a dead end with that at the moment. The victim does remember approaching the driver's side of a bus after the incident, which we're still trying to identify that bus driver. But what we have done is conducted extensive CCTV trawls in the area and identified a couple of clips that we wish to show the viewers today.
Yeah, well, let's have a look at those clips. We'll start with the first one. As you say, this is a person that you're really keen to identify. They could have crucial information.
Yeah, so this is a male that's travelling along Gloucester Road at the same time as the victim. He's described, he's pushing a pedal cycle, and he's described as a black male with trimmed short facial hair, a dark coloured baseball cap. He's wearing a black or dark coloured North Face jacket with a hood, light coloured knee-length shorts and dark shoes. We really believe that this male holds important information that will assist us with our investigation, and we're really keen to identify him today.
And let's have a look at that second clip. Talk us through what we're seeing here, Andy.
So this male is a bit late, it's 4:20 a.m. This is a male walking down Gloucester Road towards the city centre. He's wearing a light-coloured baseball cap with dark headphones over the top and a light-coloured backpack. He crosses Gloucester Road and travels to Meridian Terrace, where he pauses slightly and looks up Meridian Terrace. So we're really keen to understand what that male may have witnessed or may have seen at that time. So if that person is watching today or someone knows who they are, we're really keen for them to contact us so we can understand what they know.
Yeah, you're urging them to come forward. And I have to ask, how's the victim doing now?
So the victim is still very much affected by what's happened to him. Specialist officers from my team are supporting him at the moment, but the impact of serious sexual violence can last for a very long time. He's very keen for the male to be brought to justice who did this to him, and that's why we're making an appeal here today.
Yeah, we appreciate you coming in, Andy. Thank you so much. So, do you recognise either of these two men? They could have some information about this assault, or were you in the area of Gloucester Road on the 9th of July, and did you see anything suspicious? If so, please do get in touch. Our contact details are on the screen now.
3-year-old Tom Kerwin went for a night out with his friends in Wolverhampton, but tragically, he never came home. Tom was attacked and stabbed to death outside a nightclub. Now, 10 years on, his family and the police are again appealing for information. And we're joined now by Detective Superintendent Sean Edwards from West Midlands Police. Sean, thank you for joining us. Viewers may remember you from 2018 when you first appealed for this case. It's been 10 years now since Tom was murdered. What can you tell us about what happened that night?
Yes, take us back 10 years ago, which was the early hours of Sunday, the 8th of July, 2012. Tom and his friends went to the Burra nightclub in Wolverhampton. We know inside there was a minor dispute, and then when the people came out of the club, around about 4:30 in the morning, we know there was quite a big disturbance in the street. People turned up in cars, and tragically during that disturbance, Tom was stabbed. We've prosecuted 6 people for their part in the disturbance, but unfortunately we haven't been able to charge anyone with Tom's murder as yet.
Well, hopefully our viewers are able to help with that today. And you do have some CCTV. This is from near the location. Can you just talk us through what happens here?
Yes, this is Tom coming out of the club just before that disturbance. Unfortunately, the actual incident where Tom was stabbed wasn't captured on CCTV. And this is why one of the reasons I'm here today to appeal for anyone who saw that and can help us.
And just get those answers. Now, Tom's mother, Emma, joined us on the programme in 2018 and was understandably devastated by what's happened. I know that you and your team have been in contact with her recently and are still in contact with her. How is she coping?
She's determined that someone's brought to justice for this. I can't imagine what it's like to lose a son. So it's extremely hard for her. I'm hoping being here today, we get those answers to help her.
OK, thank you. We've actually got a statement from Emma, and you can see it on the screen here, and it reads, "For 10 years, we as a family and as a community have made numerous appeals to find answers. The answers, we believe, lie within multiple separate witness groups. 10 years on, I'm reaching out to you all. Has the passage of time played heavily on your consciences? Do you now have families of your own? Imagine having the most beautiful person in your life taken so cruelly. My son's life ended alone without his family or a familiar face with him. Please give Tom the long-awaited justice that he so much deserves." I mean, they really are powerful words. Why is it so important to relaunch this investigation today, Sean?
I think I say Emma's words are so powerful, as you say. This is 10 years on. What we're asking for is anyone who's in the club at the time who saw something, was possibly involved in that fight. 10 years on, they may have been scared to come forward at the time. We're asking, you hear Emma's words, we're asking them to come forward now after 10 years.
And if anyone did need that extra incentive, there's even a reward as well.
That's right. So Crime Stoppers and also the family have put forward money. So we've now got £30,000 reward leading to the conviction for the person who killed Tom.
Well, hopefully that could well be the incentive people need. Sean, thank you for joining us today. If you have any information that might help bring some peace to Tom's family and friends, then you can visit the Crime Stoppers website or call them on a free phone 0800 555 111. It comes from detectives in Northern Ireland who are looking for help to find those responsible for the brutal murder of Mark Hall. Joining us from the Police Service of Northern Ireland is Detective Chief Inspector Neil McGuinness. Thank you for coming in today, Neil. First of all, can you just tell us a bit more about Mark?
Yes, Rav. Mark was originally a resident from the St James's area of West Belfast. He had been living in the Republic of Ireland at the time of his murder. with his partner and young daughter. He did make a habit of coming up to visit his elderly mother and his sister, still had family in the St James's area, on a Saturday.
OK, so can you tell us what happened on the day Mark was killed? This was Saturday, 18th of December, just last year.
Yes, that was the Saturday before Christmas, very busy shopping day. So Mark, as he was in the habit of doing, got the train from the Republic of Ireland into Belfast, walked the distance to his sister's home, and then spent a few hours there, and then walked down to Rodney Drive, which is in the St James's area of West Belfast. That's the area that Mark grew up, was a little boy in, and knew all his life and was well known there. He walked there with his sister and her 10-year-old son and visited with his mother.
OK, and it was then that this awful attack happened. So talk us through the events that you know so far.
Yes, really quite horrific. Mark's sister left the home to go to a nearby shop to buy some groceries for her mother. On her return, she saw two masked men carrying firearms approach the front door. That lady very bravely fought with one of the men, prevented them from getting into the front door. Sadly, as she was fighting with one gunman at the door, her 10-year-old son was pushed out of the way by the other gunman, who approached the window and basically executed Mark through the window, fired 7 shots, striking Mark 5 times. Mark subsequently died in the living room. The gunmen then, as they flew on foot, they fired a shot at Mark's sister. It actually went through the handbag she was carrying, and luckily she was uninjured.
It's absolutely horrific, and for anyone to witness, especially, as you say, a young child, a 10-year-old, Mark's nephew, who was there, present at the scene.
Yes, so he saw his mother fighting with a gunman. He was pushed himself by a gunman. He heard the shots, believed his mother was shot dead, and actually lost his uncle in the incident. So that child is traumatised for life.
Absolutely understandable. So what have you been able to find out so far about the gunmen?
So we know there were 2 gunmen, Rav. They arrived in the St James's area some minutes before the murder, around about 4:30 on Saturday the 18th. You can see they arrive in a light-coloured saloon vehicle that had a taxi sign on the top. 2 gunmen get out of the back door of the car and they run down an alleyway into a network of alleyways which is locally known as the Eyes, because they are shaped like a capital I. They make their way behind this row of houses you can see to the scene, shoot Mark, and then you now see them running back out from the alleyway. They run across the Donegal Road and up a series of other alleyways, cross the Falls Road, and then into an area known as the Beachmount area, and that's where we lose track of them.
OK. Now, there is also some footage that you want to show. This is of Mark walking to his mum's. Talk us through this.
Yes, so this is before 4 o'clock in the afternoon, before the attack, but Mark is seen here walking with his sister and the young boy. Mark's wearing a very distinctive blue jacket. It was good daylight hours. Mark's well known in the area, so the reason we're showing this is to jog people's memory. Did they see Mark? Did they know Mark? Did they see him in the area? Were they in the area on the day? And what did they see?
You've already mentioned the date. This is the Saturday just before Christmas. There's lots of people around. There's lots of people on the busy roads around there. These are all people that may have seen something or may not have realised what they saw was actually a crime or criminal behaviour. And these are people you need to hear from.
Absolutely, Rav. We do know there were people in cars, there were people on bicycles, there were people on foot. It's a very busy residential area. They may well know something that they don't believe is relevant, but that we need to know. So what we're asking people to do is to contact us if they're not comfortable contacting police for any reason. Contact the Independent Crime Stoppers charity. Come forward, tell us they were in the area so we can eliminate them from our inquiries. Tell us what they know about Mark's murder, who else they saw in the area, why Mark was targeted for murder, and in fact who actually committed the murder itself.
Thank you, Neil. We really hope you can help. If you were in the area that day or have any information, please do get in touch. Our phone lines are open until midday today.